Chapter 1441. After dismissing everyone, Emil waited for his wifey in a corner of Brocade Garden. He knew that Jojo and his senior sister should have a lot to talk about after reuniting after a long time. So he was not in a hurry. However, he flung off a transparent chain on his wrist and sighed. "Give me one more month." Yua was a smart child. In these 2 months, he had continuously arranged all kinds of political affairs for him. Although he did not say anything, this child had probably already guessed his objective. He would leave, but not right now. However, this heavenly law was very annoying and wanted to drag him away from time to time, that he reckoned that the seal inside his body would not last another month. Sigh, he had to continue holding on even if he couldn't. Emil abruptly turned his head, and without even looking, he directly kicked out. After letting out a delicate cry of surprise, Commandery Princess Ian fell to the ground in resentment. The sharp pebbles on the ground had scratched out faint bloody marks on her hands. "Your Highness." Commandery Princess Ian's tears came on a whim. Unfortunately, other than his wifey, any other woman's tears were worthless in the Crown Prince's eyes. Commandery Princess Ian was wearing a peach-pink chiffon that could barely conceal her beautiful figure. She knelt on the ground with a tear-stained face and resentful eyes. Why was that man still indifferent towards her even though she had lowered her status and pride to throw herself at him? She had no more time. She was going to marry into the vassal king of Annan's estate the day after tomorrow, but she was unwilling. She was also completely helpless, which was why she took the risk in desperation to get close to this man, who was as handsome as a god. She wanted to become his, even if it was as a beloved concubine. Right now, her entire body was covered in that kind of drug. She wanted him to fiercely possess her. She had already thrown caution to the wind, and was already shameless. She only wanted to become His Highness the Crown Prince's woman. But why? Why was His Highness the Crown Prince still so disdainful towards her even at a time like this? Could it be that she was not beautiful? If it was any other man present today, they would not be able to restrain themselves from pouncing on her after seeing her attire that was as beautiful as peaches and plums. But only His Highness, that heartless and callous His Highness. If she's so unbearably lonely, then I'll send her to consummate her marriage with the vassal prince of Annan in advance. The Crown Prince brushed off the white powder on his sleeves. After some thought, he tore off a piece of his sleeve and threw it on the ground. "Yes, Your Highness." Weifeng immediately walked up nimbly and picked up Commandery Princess Ian. No. When Commandery Princess Ian heard the man's heartless words, her entire body started trembling. Her eyes contracted in horror as she shook her head repeatedly and screamed. She didn't want to become the vassal prince of Annan's woman. Although the vassal prince of Annan was considered handsome, and the vassal prince of Annan's estate was considered influential, the vassal prince of Annan Chofu couldn't even compare to a single finger of His Highness the Crown Prince. She, Commandery Princess Ian, had sworn to become the most honorable woman in the world. She could not let the vassal prince of Annan ruin her like this. Don't. Commandery Princess Ian shrieked in horror, but Weifeng directly knocked her unconscious with a karate chop. After picking up this pretentious woman, Weifeng turned around and jumped onto the roof. By the time Arbor arrived, this farce had already completely ended. There was only a faint smell of aphrodisiac left in the air. Chapter 1442. What's that smelly smell? The little one puffed up her cheeks and grumbled unhappily. She bounced over to Crown Prince's side. The little Crown Princess wrapped her arms around his waist and burrowed her head into his embrace. The Crown Prince's heart was about to be melted by her. He hugged her back and cried out in grievance. Xiao, when you weren't here just now, a female scoundrel came over and wanted to drug me, but I kicked her away. Arbor looked up at him, her eyes round and bright. Where is she? She was going to kill her. She could tell that this drug wasn't anything good just by smelling it. With such strong effects, it wasn't good for the body. She hurriedly fanned her hands in front of Crown Prince to help him get rid of the smell of the drug. Does it hurt? It hurts. My whole body is burning up. Crown Prince took the opportunity to rub against the little one. What should I do, Jojo? Arbor rolled her eyes and pushed his handsome face away. Stop pretending. You have the drug in your body. Unless it's a neurotoxin like the devil's grass, all other drugs won't work on you. Burning up? Big Liar still wants to trick Jojo. Moreover, as his drug improves, neurotoxins like the devil's grass won't be able to do anything to him in a while. Sigh, my wife is too smart. I can't fool her. Emolian looked at her helplessly. Jojo, have you finished talking to your senior? Arbor looked at him with bright eyes. Emolian, there's something I need to tell you. Okay, let's talk on the way. Crown Prince Mo grasped her soft, petite hand and pulled her onto the royal carriage, heading straight for the Eastern Palace. Arbor thought for a moment and said, Emolian, the normal passage between the 6 prefectures and the lower star sector will open at the beginning of July, right? Emolian was startled when he heard this, and then he nodded. Are you planning to go to the 6 prefectures continent? Arbor nodded her head vigorously. Whether it was for public or private reasons, she had to find the Shuntion prefecture's prefecture lord to settle accounts. She had to find him to settle the grudges between her past life and this one. All right. Emolian nodded without hesitation. Since the little one had already made her decision, he would support her unconditionally. Plus, with her talent of 3 out of 5, going to the 6 prefectures to cultivate would only be beneficial to her. If it's a normal passageway, as long as one's profound strength is at the 13th level or above, and is able to sense even a trace of the 5 spirits' power, they will be able to go up. Emolian said with a smile. You've already met the requirements, so it won't be difficult for you to go up. At that time, the normal passageway will open above our Mo Kingdom capital. The 3,000 steps that appeared were called the Stairway to Heaven. You just have to climb up. For someone like you who already possesses the power of the 5 spirits, this is not difficult at all. Arbor looked at him with bright eyes and shrank into his arms. Let's go together? Or do you need to take care of some matters before coming to find me? The tiny Northern Prince Mo couldn't keep Northern Prince Mo. With his cultivation, he definitely couldn't stay here for long. Rather than letting heavenly law drag him away, he might as well obediently go up himself. Prince Mo's breathing stopped slightly. He gazed at his little wife in his arms tenderly and said, Jojo, there's something I must tell you as well. Speak. Aye. Just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, Prince Mo couldn't help but chuckle as he gazed at her large, bright, curious eyes. He lifted his arms and hugged her, saying, It's fine, I'll go with you. I'll accompany you wherever you go. Chapter 1443. Boom. A white light flitted across the horizon, turning the dark night into day in a split second. Why is there thunder all of a sudden? Arbor looked up at the sky in bewilderment. Prince Mo looked up at the pitch-black night, before lowering his gaze and squeezing Arbor's small hand silently. Jojo. I will always be by your side. Emolian patted her head. Okay. Arbor nodded. She hugged his arm and leaned against him, squinting her eyes as she gazed at the stars in the distance. In this lifetime, my life will no longer be controlled by others. Arbor muttered to herself as she hugged his arm. She tilted her head and rested her head on it, looking like she had fallen asleep as the carriage moved slowly. Emolian turned to look at her before simply pulling her into his arms and adjusting her into a comfortable sleeping position. It was a quiet night. Under the stillness of the night, the towering palace walls in the distance were dimly illuminated by the dusky palace lanterns. The carriage wheels rolled across the corridor paved with yellow marble, exiting Splendid Garden, and heading for the Eastern Palace. The two people's figures drew out two oblique shadows on the ground. The starlight shone, stacking together in a sticky manner. The vassal king of Annan's estate. It was late at night. Inside vassal Prince Chofu's room. It was currently the time of spring. Just now, someone had thrown Commandery Princess Ian inside from outside the window, giving Chofu a false alarm. When he chased after her, she had already disappeared without a trace. However, he saw that the beauty's clothes were half exposed under the lamplight. She was incomparably beautiful, and most importantly, she had even thrown herself into his arms. In a moment of impulsiveness, Chofu carried this woman, who would be marrying into the vassal king's estate the day after tomorrow, into the back room. In any case, she was the one who initiated it, and they were about to get married, so Chofu didn't care that much. Everything was fine at first, right? The two of them hugged each other and rolled around in bed. It was nothing much. Most importantly, that commandery Princess Ian actually called out the words, "Your Highness the Crown Prince," when the vassal prince of Anan was very pleased, that it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured on young Master Chow's 80 feet tall fire. Fuck, he had spent so much effort in the middle of the night. And this woman still thought that the person she had slept with was the crown prince? This was intolerable. No man would be able to tolerate this. There was a fucking green grassland above him, and the horses were galloping. Vassal Prince Cho immediately slapped the dazed commandery Princess Ian awake. Unexpectedly, after the princess woke up, she was even worse off. When the princess discovered that her virginity, which she had preserved for 17 to 18 years, and wanted to offer to the person she admired, had been ruined by this vassal prince of Anan. It was over. The princess let out a mournful shriek that was comparable to a nightingale's mournful wail, and it immediately jolted everyone in the vassal prince's courtyard awake from their sweet dreams. The princess immediately pounded the vassal prince of Anan's chest with her small fists as if she had gone mad. She even kicked him off the bed, throwing a tantrum that the vassal prince of Anan's flock of concubines even thought that a thief had broken into the vassal prince's room. When they barged in after knocking on the door, they saw this strange scene. The vassal prince had fallen naked on the ground, and he was currently curled up with his back arched. He was clutching his thing, and the veins on his forehead were bulging from the pain. Meanwhile, that naked whatever commandery princess was currently kneeling on the bed. When she saw so many women rushing in, she immediately let out another hoarse shriek. Chapter 1444. Ah! This shrill scream immediately attracted a large number of royal guards from outside the courtyard. The vassal prince of Anan's face had turned green from anger. He pointed shakily at the door and shrieked, close the door, close the door!" Slap! The concubines quickly closed the door for the vassal prince. The vassal prince stood up stark naked. His entire body was trembling from the pain, and he was so angry that he had lost all face. He walked up to the commandery princess and roared, "Ian!" Blurg! Commandery Princess Ian immediately spat out a mouthful of filth. It all landed on the vassal prince of Anan's face. The group of concubines looked at each other in bewilderment. Ian! The vassal prince of Anan was nearly disgusted to death. He wiped his face, but he still felt that his hands and body were emitting a foul stench. The vassal prince let out a furious roar, and took out an ox whip from his inner world with a flip of his hand. He then swung it directly at commandery Princess Ian's naked body. Ah! Ah! Commandery Princess Ian screamed as she dodged. She suddenly lunged forward like a madwoman, and grabbed the vassal prince's head, biting at his chin. Ow ow! The vassal prince screamed in pain. Who the hell knew how miserable he was today? Did this Ian go crazy? She wasn't the one throwing herself at him. She was the one who took the initiative to invite him to roll in the sheets, alright? What was wrong with her now? She was going back on her word after doing it. As the two people overlapped, the vassal prince lost his balance and fell backward, causing Ian to sit heavily on his abdomen. Subsequently, the vassal prince's expression changed. His eyebrows were crooked as he bared his teeth and screamed, "Ow!" It felt like that thing was about to be crushed. Go to hell! The naked commandery Princess Ian abruptly punched the vassal prince's left eye heavily. The vassal prince fell backward in response, and the back of his head smashed heavily onto the floor tiles with a thump. Cough cough. Arbor didn't even know when he returned to the Eastern Palace last night. When he woke up, Arbor lowered his head and looked at himself. He was nestled in the big bed made of agarwood, clean and tidy. Did little Mo secretly change her clothes yesterday? Miss, you're awake now. Peony smiled as she lifted the curtain and walked in. You slept well last night, didn't you? It's okay, Arbor said embarrassedly, looking around. Where's Mo Yen? His Highness has been teaching the 12th Prince how to handle government affairs these days. Both of them are probably still in the Great King's imperial study. Oh, Arbor nodded and stole a glance at Xiao Yao. He coughed softly and said, Xiao Yao, when did I come back yesterday? About 1 o'clock in the morning. Xiao Yao walked up with the clothes in her hands with a chuckle. However, before she could get close to the bed, the clothes in her hands had already been taken away. When she looked back, she saw that maid Haitang walking up methodically and reaching out to help her miss get up. Yet Xiaomu rolled over and sat up, jumping off the bed with a stomp of her legs and running to the side. Haitang quickly chased after her with the clothes and advised seriously, Crown Princess, you have to get used to Haitang's existence. In a few days, Xiao Yao will be going back to prepare for her wedding. His Highness the Crown Prince instructed Haitang to do everything personally in the future, and not let the Crown Princess get involved if she can help it. Chapter 1445. Arbor. Thank God I'm not a useless person. Xiao Yao was also behind him, and she couldn't help but twitch her lips. His Highness must be out of his mind to actually send Haitang to the Crown Princess's side. Then you can just send Peony, Duwan or Camellia and Osmanthus over. Crown Princess, you can't touch this. Haitang, come here. Crown Princess, don't touch that. Haitang, come here. Crown Princess, put it down. Crown Princess, don't. The young Crown Prince Consort pattered out the door and slammed the door of the Eastern Palace's bedchamber with a loud bang. With a deafening sound, Xiao Yao pursed her lips speechlessly. As soon as she turned around, she saw Haitang glaring at her with an honest and wooden expression. Big sister Xiao Yao, His Highness has instructed you to take your leave starting in 3 days, right? Why aren't you leaving? Xiao Yao. Sister Xiao Yao, this is His Highness's order. Oh, can you not always add words like you and oh when you're talking? It made her subconsciously and inexplicably add these 2 words. Xiao Yao wiped her sweat and looked at her worriedly. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration and said, His Highness didn't send you to the Crown Princess's side on purpose, did he? The Crown Prince couldn't be thinking of using the wooden and somewhat hilarious Haitang to amuse the Crown Princess every day, right? Xiao Yao's lips twitched speechlessly. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. How would I know? Xiao Yao's outstretched hand hung down speechlessly. She really wanted to ask Haitang if she could stop adding suffixes at the end of every sentence. Someone told me that it's more cordial to talk like this. Xiao Yao's head was full of black lines. Arbor was annoyed to death by this Haitang. He walked all the way out of the door. She entered the small garden from outside the palace walls and strolled for a short while before she saw 2 plump eunuchs leading the Aikido tribe's young master ACI and his group. They were currently walking towards her. When Arbor saw this, he immediately turned around and left. She just came out to relax. There was no need for her to argue with a group of people. However, in ACI's eyes, her action of turning around and running away looked like she had a guilty conscience. He immediately shouted, Stop right there. Arbor didn't listen to his nonsense and ran away without a trace. Yas was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. This little guy was simply too detestable. Big brother Yas, why did you call her? Akir couldn't hide the unbearable jealousy in her eyes. She wasn't stupid. She could see that there was an unusual flame leaping in Yas's eyes toward that little slut, and she especially wanted to extinguish these 2 flames that were slowly rising. Don't talk nonsense. ACI glared at her coldly. Then, his figure flashed and chased after Arbor. Akir angrily stomped her feet. Big brother Ollie, look at him. Ollie also had a displeased expression on his face. Big brother was too concerned about this Northern Prince Consort MO. Arbor ran very far away in one breath before stopping. She reached out and took out a teleportation talisman. When she thought about it, this teleportation talisman wasn't reliable. Who knew where it would teleport her? Forget it. Let's just leave it at that. Yes, that bull probably wouldn't shamelessly follow me with his manly tone. The little stoic withdrew her small feet and circled around to another garden, planning to stroll around casually. However, she saw 2 dejected little royal maids walking towards her. One of them was holding a pot of wilted begonia. Chapter 1446. Sigh, what a pity. Nanny Feng even summoned the famous gardeners among the people into the palace. But this Jasper begonia still can't be saved. Sigh. Her Majesty the Empress Dowager is going to be in a bad mood. We should be more careful these few days. Nanny Feng told us to throw this pot of flowers far away. This place is far enough, right? Sigh, throw it away, throw it away. The two of them put down the pot of jasper begonia and walked away with their heads drooping and sighing. Arbor ran to the jasper begonia and looked at it carefully. Suddenly, she reached out a small jade-white hand and covered the withered and curled leaves at the top of the begonia. In just a moment, the leaves seemed to have been reborn. They unfolded and turned from yellow to emerald green. Every tender leaf emerged from the stem of the flower. Suddenly, a flower bud emerged from under the emerald green leaves, followed by a second, a third. Several flower buds rolled into a ball and bloomed in unison. ACI, who followed behind, stared blankly at the small figure with her back facing him. At this moment, he only saw a patch of green blooming in front of his eyes. The light green begonia flowers intertwined with the dark green leaves, creating a visual feast. Arbor retracted her small hand and tilted her head to look at the jasper begonia that was blooming in high spirits. She reached out and hugged it in her arms. Send it back to grandmother. The little fellow made up her mind. She turned around and was about to head to the Longevity Palace when she almost bumped into ACI, who was walking quickly over. What are you doing? Darling Xiao pursed her lips, looking like she didn't want to see him, and took a step back. Assie's pupils constricted slightly. He saw that the little girl was wearing a seaweed blue dress and holding a pot of blooming begonia flowers. However, her snow-white face was not inferior to the pot of begonia flowers she was holding. Are you deaf? I told you to stop, but the more I told you to, the faster you ran? ACI quickly averted his gaze and bellowed at Xiao Mu in humiliation. You're purposely pretending that you didn't hear me calling you, right? Arbor threw him a cold look. Excuse me, you haven't answered my question. ACI reached out angrily, wanting to grab her wrist. However, Xiao Mu stomped her leg over, ruthlessly kicking his black boot. Shut up. Who had the time to talk nonsense with this person? Yas laughed instead of getting angry. Do you really think that no one can control you? After saying that, he reached out to grab Arbor. Arbor only felt a strong and powerful force rushing towards him. He was slightly startled and dodged to the side, a trace of anger appearing in his eyes. Originally, she didn't want to argue with this person, but he insisted on finding trouble with her. Since that was the case, then, train him. Arbor simply reached out and stored the jasper begonia into his inner world. He summoned the pharaoh from his conscious and leaped into the air to strike Yas's head. You woman! You're still coming? This scene evoked a strong sense of familiarity in Yas's heart. Bastard! ACI met the attack with a mystic energy palm strike, but it was instantly neutralized by the little stoic's pharaoh. When the two mystic energies collided, considerable energy ripples rose and fell in the small garden. Arbor reached out to press down a defensive boundary, which protected the nearby plants from harm. A flame as thick as a wrist suddenly sprayed out from the feral and burned toward Assie's chest without warning. It's over, time to wake up. Chapter 1447. This was probably Arbor's smoothest usage of wood spirits to date. With a wave of her small hand, a dozen or so wooden vines shot out from her sleeves. They snaked forward like a dozen whips, lashing out at ACI at the same time. ACI had to dodge the fiery lines from the feral on one hand and evade the entanglement of the wooden vines on the other. This caused his movements to slow down a bit. Arbor took advantage of this opening and quickly summoned the startled swan dagger from her conscious. She suddenly aimed at Assie's chest and stabbed. Yas quickly dodged, barely avoiding the shockingly fast attack. However, the startled swan dagger was too fast. Even though he dodged quickly, the trace of mystic energy on the startled swan dagger had already cut open Assie's heavy clothes and left a faint cut on his chest. Yas glanced down. When he raised his head again, there was a trace of a sneer between his proud brows. What? You want to cut open my clothes and admire my body? If that's the case, you should have said so earlier. Arbor only thought that this person was sick, and quite sick at that. With a raise of her hand, a dozen or so vines shot out from her sleeves and wrapped around Assie's legs. ACI narrowed his eyes and suddenly stomped on the ground. The earth beneath his feet immediately roiled, erecting 3 earthen walls in the blink of an eye. He forced Arbor into the earthen walls, and suddenly reached out to grab Arbor's shoulder. Arbor couldn't help but fly into a rage. She threw a backhanded punch at one of the earthen walls. This punch contained no less than 500 kilograms of force. It directly caused the earthen wall to crack a few times, and the layer of earth to rustle and fall. It was at this moment that Assie's fingers were about to touch her wrist. Arbor kicked his hand away with a flying kick. She glared at him coldly, her almond eyes blazing with fire. She suddenly activated the teleportation talisman, and her figure instantly disappeared from Assie's side. ACI was stunned for a moment, before he hurriedly spread out his consciousness to sense where she was. He couldn't help but be shocked when he saw that the little fellow's figure had actually moved several hundred meters away. However, this short distance was not enough to stop him from quickly catching up. After Arbor threw out the 3 teleportation talismans, he discovered a fatal problem. If she was fighting with an enemy, and the enemy's speed was extremely fast, then this teleportation talisman would only be able to solve the problem for a moment, and would not be able to completely get her out of danger. That was because the teleportation talisman only had a range of 1,000 meters. Although it could move infinitely, it had no sense of direction. There was no guarantee that it would move out, and then move back. When Yas caught up again, he saw the little girl in blue standing along the towering palace wall, staring at him with cold, unblinking eyes. Assie's handsome face darkened as he sneered. "Run! Why aren't you running anymore? I thought you could run really fast." Crack. Yas suddenly felt a slight wind behind his head. His entire body tensed as he abruptly shifted to the side. However, it was too late. A metallic fist had already landed on his back as fast as the wind. ACI grunted and turned his head in a daze. He subconsciously met the golem's icy fist. Ah! After a hoarse eagle cry, a sharp eagle king swooped down from the sky and grabbed the golem's head. However, the golem didn't care about the eagle claw at all, and directly threw a punch at ACI. Bang! Chapter 1448. Assie's body swayed slightly, and he couldn't help but curse inwardly that he had almost fallen into the hands of a golem again. That golem was too strange. Not only were its movements smooth, but it also seemed to have unparalleled thinking ability, and could come up with a sneaky move from time to make him suffer. Arbor stood on the side and watched Big Treasure and Assie's exchange. His figure suddenly moved, and an icicle flew through the air toward Assie's handsome face. ACI, who was dealing with the golem, was slightly startled and couldn't help but be flustered. As he dodged, the icicle cut Assie's arm again. Arbor creased her brows, seemingly very dissatisfied that her all-out attack only left a bloody mark on Assie's arm. Compared to several years ago in Shuang City, this guy seemed to be much stronger. It was a bit inconceivable. Even if he ate tonics every day, he couldn't possibly advance this quickly. After all, when she fought with ACI in Shuang City, he was like a cripple, and was completely suppressed and beaten up by her back then. There was something strange about this guy. However, she also had many fortuitous encounters these past few years, so it didn't mean that ACI couldn't have them too. Big Treasure, attack his lower body. At Xiaomu's command, the golem immediately swept its leg and kicked at Assie's legs. ACI sneered. When he turned his head, he saw that little stoic swiftly dashing over. With a wave of her sleeve, a white mist suddenly pelted his head and face. Not good. The damn girl was going to use a malicious move again. ACI hastily covered his mouth and nose and blocked his 5 senses, trying his best not to inhale that white mist. However, what was the meaning of that wound on his arm, suddenly feeling so painful? Assie's expression changed, and he rushed to Arbor's side with a large stride. He raised his palm, and a copper bangle shot out. Arbor's small hand quickly retracted, but she couldn't stop the copper bangle's speed. Just as that copper bangle was about to wrap around her wrist, a peach-colored figure swayed and appeared next to Arbor. With a flick of her sleeve, a powerful force shook Assie's hand away. At the same time, that copper bangle was tossed into the air with a ding. Assie's eyes changed. He suddenly tore open the void and summoned, "Qi Yan, come out." The huge black shadow instantly filled the space. The venerable peach blossom immortal looked at the huge shadow that had suddenly appeared in front of him. It had bull horns on its head and a body like a giant python. His expression changed slightly. Ancient python bull? Why would a sacred beast like the ancient python bull appear here? While he was distracted, he heard a whoosh sound. That copper cuff descended from above and abruptly wound around Xiaomu's slender wrist, trapping her firmly in place at once. Young master! The golem arbor roared. Just as he was about to pounce forward, he saw Yas take a misstep and close in on Arbor's side. His hand suddenly pressed down on Arbor's left shoulder. Damned girl, you poisoned me again. Yas coughed twice, feeling as if the pain all over his body had multiplied countless times. Not only was the wound on his arm unbearably painful, even the cut on his chest was starting to hurt fiercely. ACI also had a copper bangle on his hand. His other hand moved to Arbor's neck and squeezed her slender neck. He sneered. You're certain that I won't kill you, right? Unfortunately, you're still trapped by my dual star immortal spirit bangle, aren't you? Chapter 1449. Assie's lips curled into a cold sneer. Once the dual star immortal spirit bracelets encircle you, all your strength will be sealed. How is it? Do you feel terrible without those sharp little claws and fangs? ACI couldn't help but glance at her smugly. Bam! At such a close distance, the little fellow directly raised her violent little fist and punched him in the eye. Ow! How the fuck was this possible? The dual star immortal spirit bracelets should have already sealed all the mystic energy aura on this damn girl. She shouldn't be able to use any strength, so why was her fist still so hard? It was practically like jade, and directly smashed his eye until it was swollen. ACI reached out his left hand, and the hand encircled by the copper bracelets forcefully tugged at the little girl's right wrist. He saw Arbor staring at him expressionlessly with a stoic little face, but she didn't move at all. She had activated a Vajra talisman and a gravity talisman for herself, so it would be strange if ACI could drag her. Right after that, Arbor sent ACI flying with a flying kick. However, their wrists were locked together by the copper bracelets, so if she didn't run after ACI when he flew, her wrists would be pulled until they were close to breaking. The unbearable pain was unbearable. Undo it. Darling Xiao was furious. Her left fist encircled with the Vajra talisman struck Assie's face like raindrops. Stop it, stop it, stop it! Hearing the commotion, Ali and Akir, who had rushed over after hearing the news, ran over one after the other. Their eyes widened in horror as they pounced forward to separate the two people. Especially Akir, when she saw Darling Xiao squatting next to ACI and forcefully punching his face. She almost went crazy. She hugged Assie's body and pulled him back with all her might. ACI groaned in pain. His hand was about to break from being pulled by this stupid woman. Arbor was in even more unbearable pain. She was anxious, angry, hateful and angry, and a ruthless glint appeared in her eyes. Her startled swan dagger swiftly flew out and stabbed straight at Akir's neck, communicating with her mind. Akir! Ali cried out in alarm and pulled Akir over. The startled swan dagger brushed past his shoulder, leaving behind a deep bloody gash with a swoosh. It could be seen how fast and cold this dagger was. The young crown princess wanted to take Akir's life directly. What kind of deep hatred is this? How could you be so ruthless to Akir? You vicious woman! Ali was like a lion whose tail had been stepped on, roaring angrily. I want all of you to die. Arbor bellowed angrily. The little stoic's face was ablaze with viciousness, and the substantial killing intent in her eyes instantly shut Ali's mouth. He was extremely alarmed. As it turned out, the little stoic wasn't an expressionless person. When she got angry, she was really quite terrifying. Kill them all! Arbor roared. An extremely thin white snake suddenly burrowed out of the paradise and transformed into a huge python, heading straight for Yas, who was sitting on the ground, to devour him. The gaping mouth caused the Yas siblings to feel fear in their hearts. No, don't! Akir screeched. Sensing that its master's life was in danger, the ancient python bull hastily retracted its tail, abandoning the venerable peach blossom immortal who was tangled with it. It roared angrily and swiftly slithered toward the little white snake. Little Mingming quickly dodged. This ancient python bull had already entered the initial stage of growth, so its strength was naturally much higher than the little white snake that had just entered the holy beast level, and was only at the initial stage of infant stage. Chapter 1450. If they fought it head-on, not only would both sides suffer, the little white snake might even lose its life. Even the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had to be careful when dealing with this ancient python bull, let alone an infant great void netherworld serpent. Fortunately, this ancient python bull had yet to reach the middle stage of its growth stage. Otherwise, even the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal would be in trouble. Compared to humans, sacred beasts' physical bodies and strength were incomparable. Roar! The ancient python bull's roar stunned everyone present. Even Qiu, Qing Luan, and the others who had just run out also stopped in their tracks and looked at it cautiously. A cough cough. ACI half squatted on the ground and pushed the python bull's head away, preventing it from attacking Arbor. I'm fine. Arbor tugged at the bronze bracelet on his wrist. His eyes were red with anger. Suddenly he shouted, "Let go, let go, let go! Let go! Let go, let go!" His voice became louder and louder. Arbor shook the bronze bracelet on his wrist in agitation, as if it was being grabbed by a ghost. He tried to break free with all his might. There were red marks where the bracelet connected to his wrist. On his snow-white hand, it was a ghastly sight. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sensed that something was wrong with the little fellow's emotions. He quickly came to her side and grabbed her little hand. Jojo, be good. Don't panic. Jojo, there's a way. There's a way. Uffed. Yas simply sat cross-legged behind the python bull and endured the pain all over his body. He coughed twice and couldn't help but laugh out loud. What can I do? Unless our minds are connected, there's no way to undo it. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned his head and shot a cold gaze at ACI. Shut up. He stepped forward and kicked Assie's chest. This kick was so fast that the python bull could not stop it in time. When the kick landed on Assie's chest, he felt his blood churn and blood trickle from the corner of his mouth. Roar! The mountain-sized python bull straightened its body and glared at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal with its ferocious eyes. Disgusting! 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 Arbor's small face scrunched up. His eyes were red as he shook his wrist. Seeing that there was no way to take that thing away from her wrist, her expression turned serious. She suddenly recalled the startled swan dagger and cut it off her wrist. However, a spiritual item like the startled swan dagger had already gained sentience. How could it bear to cut off its young master's wrist? The dagger was about to touch her wrist when it paused. Shocked, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly grabbed her right hand, which was wearing the bronze bracelet, and exclaimed, "No! Jojo's dual star immortal spirit bracelets are no ordinary profound armaments. They can be big or small. Even if you cut off your wrist, they can still fit on your upper arm." On the other hand, Yas, who was sitting on the ground with his wrist raised high, looked at the fierce and decisive little girl in front of him with a sour feeling in his heart. Just now, she actually wanted to break her own wrist without hesitation, just because she didn't want to be tied to him. Why was there a sharp pain in his heart? Where did this uncomfortable feeling come from? Did she hate him so much so that she was willing to harm herself just to leave him? Aha! Arbor screamed uncontrollably. At this moment there was no one in front of her. ACI, Akir or Ollie. She only saw herself tied to a stone bed, her hands and feet firmly bound to the stone bracelets. Chapter 1451. She only saw Fan Qiuhe smiling gently at her. He raised the tool in his hand, cut open her body, and rummaged through her dantian for something. Ah! Arbor, who had lost control, stared straight ahead in horror. There, the person sitting there was no longer Yas. In Arbor's eyes, ACI was Fan Qiuhe. Akir was also Fan Qiuhe. And Ollie was still Fan Qiuhe. Many Fan Qiuhe were grinning maliciously at her in front of her. She frantically swung the bronze bracelet on her wrist and screamed, Fan Qiuhe, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you, Fan Qiuhe. Aha! Jojo. Mo Lien, who had heard the news, couldn't believe what he was seeing. When he left the bedchamber in the morning, his baby was still fine. She was sleeping quietly and adorably while hugging the blanket. What was going on now? It was as if she had suddenly contracted bipolar disorder. She was mutilating her arms uncontrollably. If the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hadn't grabbed her and firmly held her trembling hands, the little fellow might have fractured her arms. Jojo. Emolien hurriedly rushed over and hugged her in his arms. He hurriedly comforted her. Jojo, it's okay, it's okay. Jojo, Jojo, look at me. Jojo, I'm Lien. Jojo. Jojo. Arbor's eyes were as deep as a vast expanse of smoke. They were so dark that it was as if she had fallen into an abyss. Emolien didn't say anything. He still hugged Arbor with one hand and raised a ball of purple flames with the other. He threw it directly at ACI. Whoosh! The rising purple flames condensed into a ball and pounced straight at Assie's head. What this attack wanted was his wretched life. Big brother! Ollie screamed. Without waiting for him to step forward and protect him with his life, the mountain-like boa lifted its head. Roar! The python bull swallowed the purple flame in one gulp. Then its expression changed again and again. It roared a few times before opening its mouth and spitting out the flame. However, this ball of flame was no longer purple. Instead, it was suffused with traces of gold. With a paw sound, it landed at Emolien's feet and melted a bluestone brick on the ground. Ancient python bull. Emolien sneered and looked up at Yas. Did you bully my Jojo with this animal? Bah, who's bullying who? You'd better figure it out. Yas laughed instead of getting angry. At this moment Arbor, who had been quiet for a while, began to fling his wrists as if he had gone crazy. His eyes trembled slightly as he muttered to himself. Don't tie me up, don't tie me up. I'm going to kill you, kill you. Jojo, Jojo. Emolien reached out and grasped his wrists tightly. She stared at the large red marks on his wrists, and a trace of heartache flitted across his eyes. Jojo, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. We'll definitely find a way to undo this, Jojo. Emolien impatiently comforted the little fellow in her arms. A black flame quietly lit up on her fingertips. A sudden clap of thunder flashed across the horizon. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's eyelids twitched slightly. He hurriedly reached out and pressed down on Emolien's restless hand. Don't be rash. Don't attract the heavenly Tao. Besides, burning this fellow to death is even more troublesome now. It's even more impossible to remove the twin star immortal spirit bracelets. I feel that what Jojo hates the most is not being tied up with this fellow but the bracelets on his wrist. Chapter 1452. Was that really the case? The dejected Assie's ears twitched involuntarily when he heard the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's words. He suddenly looked up at them. However, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Emolien were not looking at him. Instead, they were staring at the copper bangles on their hands. The copper bangles looked very ordinary. Between the two copper bangles was a copper rope that was not too long. However, this pair of seemingly ordinary copper bangles was actually a spirit weapon. Emolien frowned as she pondered over a solution. Does the little fellow still have some inner demons? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked as he looked at Prince Emo thoughtfully. If that's the case, it's not good. If the inner demons are allowed to grow to a certain stage, it will greatly affect the speed of her cultivation in the future. It might even affect the refinement of her mental state. Emolien was silent for a moment before she said coldly, No. Forget it if you don't want to talk about it. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal turned to look at Arbor. Take her back first. However, when Emolien picked up Arbor and saw the burden beside her, she wanted nothing more than to burn this person to ashes with her sacred fire. The group returned to the Eastern Palace in silence. Everyone in the palace knew about the huge commotion that had happened just now. After setting Xiaomu down on the brocade divan, Emolien hastily covered her wrists with a blanket to prevent her from staring. Assie's entire body was in pain. The little fellow had poisoned him with a poison that infinitely increased the pain in his nerves. Although he had a poison-repelling fruit in his body that could cure hundreds of poisons, this neurotoxin was not ordinary. Even if he wanted to neutralize it, it would take time. The process was excruciating and painful, but ACI did not make a sound. Only cold sweat kept breaking out on his head. The python ox, which had shrunk to the size of a chirp, knew that its master was in a bad situation. It circled around Assie's feet with a gloomy expression. ACI endured the pain all over his body. Just as he was about to sit down on the couch, Missouri Lien, who could not bear it any longer, kicked him, causing him to fall to the ground. Ayo! The python ox roared angrily. The copper rope wasn't long to begin with, so Arbor's little hand moved slightly. Seeing that he was about to pull on her wrist again, Lien hurriedly dragged ACI a little closer. ACI felt like he was a tool that was being dragged around by that damned man. Jojo, don't be afraid. If worse comes to worst, I'll just reforge this spiritual weapon. Inject a trace of your aura into it, and let it become your spiritual tool. That way, you will definitely be able to unlock it. Lien pondered for a moment, and felt that this was the fastest and most convenient way to unlock it. Arbor stared at the beam above his head with a pair of clear black and white eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. It was just that his silence made everyone feel a little stifled in their hearts. It was as if he had suddenly lost his vitality, making people feel very uncomfortable. Inner demons must be eliminated. This can't go on. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal couldn't help but say, "Do you know what inner demons are?" He fled to the middle 6 prefectures. Lien's eyes flickered. "But I think he's not the only one." "What do you mean?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal asked, stunned. "You're right. Inner demons must be eliminated. No matter who it was, if they became Jojo's inner demon, only death awaited them. No matter how many people there are, they must all die." Qin Xian suddenly woke up from her dream. Her demonic eyes widened as she stared blankly at the dark night sky outside the window. That dream just now was so terrifying. See you tomorrow. Chapter 1453. In the depths of Qin Xian's eyes, a dim green light flashed. He hurriedly sat up and walked to the window. He pulled out a thin silk robe, and looked at the night sky outside the window in a daze. What? It's already dark. Pushing open the door, he had just taken a step out when he saw a figure about his height appear in front of him. The figure flashed past his eyes and then passed by. Dark purple clothes, a tall figure, and that back view, at first glance, was exactly the same as his own figure. What's going on? Could it be the same as last time? That he was still in a dream and had not escaped? Omega Katoka stared blankly and hurriedly chased after him. Taking a deep breath, Qin Xian followed the person in front of him into an underground dark room. This dark room was divided into several sealed cells along the stone wall. At a glance, it was pitch black and seemed to have no end. When the person in front of him walked past, suddenly, an unkempt face covered in grease appeared at the small window of the iron door. He shouted hoarsely, "Let me out, let me out!" The person in front of him walked past without looking sideways. Qin Xian's footsteps paused. When he approached the window, he subconsciously looked back. His line of sight met with 2 broken eyes with their eyeballs dug out. Slightly startled, he hurriedly walked forward. But before he reached the last sealed cell, he saw the figure slowly walking over with something in his arms. Qin Xian stared blankly and stood in the long dark corridor. As the other person slowly walked closer, he saw his appearance clearly and his heart thumped. Sure enough, it's me. If that's the case, he should still be in a dream. What kind of dream is this? Why can he see it so clearly? It's like he's looking at his past self as a bystander. He saw that when the other him in the dream walked over with someone in his arms, he did not notice his existence at all. When he slowly passed by him, Qin Xian could not help but subconsciously turn his head to take a look. With this look, he was stunned on the spot. What did he see? Although that little face was thin and sallow, and the eyes were sunken and lifeless due to hunger, but that pair of clear black and white eyes, and that skinny and lusterless little face, was clearly Mu Xiaobao himself? No, it was Arbor. Why is Arbor here? At this moment, Qin Xian's heart seemed to be gripped by something, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. He even wanted to shout out loud, as if that would release the pent-up frustration in his chest. However, the scene in front of him dissipated like water ripples, and he felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes again, the scene in front of him shocked him. My Joe's section break. Rumble. The wooden wheelchair was pushed to the shore and stopped. A woman in a light green casual robe with a long skirt that reached the ground, touched the unique bun on her head, and walked to the beach. She narrowed her eyes, and looked at a large cargo ship coming from afar. She chuckled and said, "The ship is here." Arbor could only move her little head. The woman was standing against the light. She only felt that the 5-fortune jade hairpin inlaid with large pearls on her head was emitting a dazzling luster under the sun. Then she looked at her own tattered clothes, and her dried-up hair drooping sparsely on her head. He was so envious of this beautiful lady. Why did she make her life so terrible? Chapter 1454. Hey, the cargo ship is about to reach the shore. I'll send you up in a moment, and let you leave this place as you wish, okay? The woman giggled, and turned around to look at her with a gentle and charming gaze. Don't worry, I'll see this through to the end. I'll send an old nanny to take care of your food and lodging in the future. The woman smiled seductively and clapped her hands several times, allowing an old nanny in green with drooping eyebrows to come to her side. As long as you obediently disappear from my Xian's side, I'll promise you anything. I guarantee you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. The woman giggled, and looked at the cargo ship slowly reaching the shore. She gave the old nanny in green with a look. The old nanny nodded knowingly, and pushed Arbor's wheelchair toward the ferry. 2 boatmen came over to unload the goods. They bowed and bowed in front of the woman for a while before receiving a bulging money bag. They beamed with joy and said, "Young miss, you also know that women have heavy energy. We boatmen are most afraid of inauspiciousness, and generally don't like to bring women along. Hey, you guys send him to Sichuan in a good way. You can ask for as much money as you want." After saying that, the woman took out another money pouch, and threw it to the boatman. "All right, Miss Sure. We will definitely send that miss safely to Sichuan." Miss Sure touched the Rui hairpin on her head, and nodded with a smile. She watched as the old nanny in green pushed Arbor onto the ship. When they reached the shore, she exhaled and said faintly, "I hope you never come back, little pet." The wheelchair scraped across the deck. Several crew members winked at each other, and their gazes followed Arbor's wheelchair to the deck. Cough, cough, cough. The old nanny in green coughed a few times, and stopped after pushing Arbor onto the deck. The cargo ship had already moved. This ship was 2 stories high, and the deck alone was very spacious. Gusts of cold wind blew against her body. Arbor was wearing a thin and pockmarked spring garment. Her eyes were empty as she stared blankly at the sparkling surface of the sea. What a beautiful sea! She hadn't seen it for many years. Being able to die in this place is also pretty good, Xiaomu muttered to herself. The green-robed old woman was startled. "What did you say? How did you know?" "Madam, can you please throw me into the center of the sea? This way, my body shouldn't be washed up on the shore again," Arbor said faintly, his face unconsciously showing a trace of relief. "You," the green-robed old woman couldn't help but be stunned. "You? Since you knew that our second miss tricked you onto the boat to take your life, why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you beg for mercy? Why are you still willing to board the ship?" "Oh." Arbor uttered a meaningless monosyllabic word and didn't say anything. He closed his eyes as if he was tired and took a deep breath. How long had it been since he breathed in this fresh and slightly salty air? "Aren't you afraid of death?" The green-robed old woman was startled. She didn't know why, but she felt a little uncomfortable. In their China, a 20-year-old girl's life was just beginning. The average lifespan of a person in China could reach more than 200 years, even if they were ordinary trash. This 20-year-old girl in front of her was like a dry well. There was no trace of life in her eyes. Chapter 1455. Apologies, second miss gave this old servant a death order. The blue-clothed elderly nanny clenched her fist, and looked at Arbor with a bit of guilt in her eyes. "I can't disobey." Arbor tilted her head and glanced at her. "You should be a servant of the Sure family, right? Although I don't know you, I'm very grateful. Don't hesitate. Come." The blue-clothed elderly nanny's heart inexplicably trembled. She didn't know what to say now. A young lady whose life had yet to blossom actually had such a heavy death wish. A powerful faint golden halo of power emerged from the blue-clothed elderly nanny's fist. It was just that this golden color was closer to a faint yellow, and was very faint. Arbor closed her eyes and calmly waited for death to descend. She had finally waited for this day. She finally didn't need to struggle at death's door to survive in this world. She could go see little Sixth Zheng, Huagu, Captain Gao, and the others. How wonderful. The blue-clothed elderly nanny silently apologized in her mind. Her palms swiftly struck out, and it looked like it was about to land on the back of Arbor's head. A streak of purple-red lightning suddenly enveloped this part of the world. It enveloped the entire cargo ship. What? Several boatmen quickly jumped up from the deck of the ship. Gazing blankly at the distant sky, they saw a huge dragon rapidly moving and tumbling through the clouds. Enveloped in bursts of purple mist, it sped toward them at lightning speed. Arbor's expression abruptly changed, and she almost immediately urged, "Hurry, hurry and do it!" The blue-clothed elderly nanny inwardly complained incessantly. Currently, her entire body was enveloped by an enormous pressure. So how could she still have the strength to do anything? Haha, forget about doing anything. It was extremely difficult for her to even lift a finger right now. She was completely helpless. Whoosh! A purple figure landed on the deck at an astonishing speed. His entire body was emitting traces of chilling anger. Arbor's pupils contracted, and her body unconsciously tensed up in a defensive posture. All of you must die. The purple-clothed man's cold gaze swept over the green-clothed old nanny and the crew. Suddenly, he flew over with a palm strike, directly sending 3 of the crew members flying, heavily crashing into the ship's mast. The man was like the Grim Reaper. With just a light step, he arrived in front of the other 2 startled crew members. Without waiting for them to kneel down, a pair of hands reached out and grabbed their necks. Like pinching the necks of chicks, with 2 cracking sounds, their necks were crushed at the same time. After he quickly circled around the ship, there were no longer any survivors among the crew. The 2 people on the deck, one standing and one sitting, looked at each other and saw a trace of fear in each other's eyes. However, the old granny in green clothes did not understand. Why was there such panic and fear in this young lady's eyes? Shouldn't she be happy that someone finally came to save her? But her expression actually revealed a deep sense of despair. What was the meaning of this? The old woman knew that her life would end here. Young master. Aye. She knew that she could no longer explain anything for herself. That cold hand grabbed her head, and the old woman trembled all over. No, don't search my soul. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Young master, The purple-clothed man grabbed the old woman's head and searched through her memories. Then he suddenly turned his head. Wait. Chapter 1456. He smiled at Arbor instead of getting angry. You wanna die? Is that so? He bent down and approached her, reaching out to pinch her chin. His smile was very gentle, but it made Arbor's heart turn cold. Xiao, did I say you could leave? I already said that I'll take good care of you in the future. If I don't force you to call me master, what else do you want? The man's eyes surged with emotions as he stared at her in frustration. I won't marry the Sure family's second Mississippi. I've already promised you everything. What else do you want? Don't push your luck. Xiaomu abruptly opened her mouth and bit down hard on his slender finger. The force that burst forth from her teeth seemed to wish for nothing more than to bite his finger off. Roar! Seeing that its master was attacked, the purple heaven thunder dragon swooped down from the sky like a reflex. With a sweep of its tail, it directly pulled Arbor and her wheelchair out of the deck. No! Qin Xian's pupil shrank, and he suddenly sat up from the bed. Wiping the cold sweat off his forehead, he looked at the dark night outside the window. He almost couldn't tell if he was still in a dream or had returned to reality. Damn it! He clenched his fists tightly, thinking back to the moment when Arbor was pulled out of the ship by Zishao. He seemed to have seen a trace of relief in her eyes. She did it on purpose. She deliberately let Zishao attack her, deliberately seeking death. Why? Why didn't she want to live? Qin Xian's mind was in a mess now. Some memories that were both familiar and unfamiliar to him kept popping up in his mind. They were abrupt and natural, as if they were his memories to begin with. He suddenly jumped off the bed, pushed open the door like a madman, and rushed into the night. He kept running until a faint light seemed to appear in front of him. If this dream wanted him to pick up the fragments of his memories piece by piece, then the memory in front of him should also be a part of his memories. Bam! The door was kicked open, and Qin Xian's expression changed. Didn't you say that you didn't have any improper thoughts about him? But why did he insist on bringing you back? Wouldn't it be fine if you just boarded the ship? Why did you come back? Why did you come back? A good-for-nothing like you, who can't even take care of yourself. What qualifications do you have to follow the young master? Ridiculous. Following the woman's questioning, the sound of a whip pierced through the air and lashed out at the frail little body. There was already a pool of blood on the ground. Arbor was curled up on the ground, waiting for the whip to fall. Why wasn't she dead yet? She was sent flying by the lightning dragon. Even with such a huge force, her body was actually not torn apart. Fan Qiuhe was right. Her body was very strange. Qin Xian rushed over, wanting to reach out and pick up the girl who was like a broken doll. But when his hands passed through the other's shoulders, he realized that he was still in a dream. He stared blankly at the girl, who was curled up on the ground, like an injured animal. Her eyes were deathly still. However, it was this deathly stillness that deeply burned his heart, and even the depths of his soul. Stop hitting me! Stop hitting him! Qin Xian subconsciously shouted at the woman holding the whip with all her might. Chapter 1457. Jojo? By the time Emolian realized that something was wrong, Jojo's body was already very cold to the touch. It was as if his entire body was covered in a layer of ice, and the touch of his skin was bone-chilling. Don't be afraid, it's okay. Jojo. Emolian's hand lit up with a wisp of fire spirit, and she injected it into Arbor's body to help her stabilize her chaotic breathing. Arbor was muttering, "You can't kill me, you can't kill me. Whip whip. Why does it hurt? If it hurts, why aren't you dead? Why aren't you dead yet? It hurts, whip ugh." Arbor curled herself into a ball, half bent on the brocade couch like a small shrimp. Her delicate brows were deeply furrowed. Emolian panicked when she heard this. Jojo, who hit you? Who? She seems to have been possessed by a nightmare. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked disdainfully at the flustered Emolian. He directly used a knife to land on the back of Arbor's neck, causing her to pass out. You. Emolian wanted to flare up, but she realized that Jojo had suddenly stopped making a fuss. He no longer uttered those heart-wrenching murmurs. He calmed his heart, and with a flick of his sleeve, swept her wrinkled little face. He used a sleeping drug, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. A pair of sharp phoenix eyes abruptly shot toward ACI, who was sitting on the carpet beside the brocade couch. Assie's heart couldn't help but skip a beat at the murderous intent in that gaze. No, it's not like that. I really didn't do it on purpose. ACI couldn't help but mutter. I sigh. I just saw her running all day long. When I wanted to talk to her, she ran away too. I really didn't know that her reaction would be so big. If I knew it would be like this from the start, I definitely wouldn't have done it. Sigh. There was no point in saying all this. Things had already happened. Right now he regretted it more than anyone else, alright? How could he have known that Xiaomu's reaction would be so big? After he put that thing on her wrist, she felt like she was suffocating, and her entire person was delirious. What exactly triggered her? Emolian sent a palm strike over, but was stopped by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. If you beat him up, you'll drag Jojo down with you. Wait a minute. Let's take off the dual star immortal spirit bracelets first. After saying that, he turned to look at Yas and pretended to kick him in the chest. ACI couldn't help but be startled and shrink his neck. Hurry up and tell me the truth. How do you want to undo it? Two people have to inject their spiritual power at the same time. Yas confessed honestly, but now Jojo was unconscious. How could he inject spiritual energy into him? What kind of spiritual power? Earth spirit. Yas said listlessly. I'm at the 9th level of spiritual soil, so the other person has to be at least at the 9th level of spiritual soil. Otherwise, they won't be able to undo the dual star immortal spirit bracelets. When Xiao Xiao wakes up, you will immediately assist her and undo this damned thing. Yas was silent. Are you deaf? Alright. Stop arguing. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal hurriedly pushed away Emolien, who couldn't wait to attack ACI. I think this fellow should have understood. It's fine. Since there's a way, it can naturally be undone. When Jojo wakes up later, just don't provoke her. ACI couldn't help but want to look at the little person curled up on the brocade couch. Emolien's figure flashed and blocked his view. Get away. Chapter 1458. ACI couldn't help but feel a little angry. He lifted the copper bracelet on his wrist and glanced coldly at Emolien. For now, scram. Emolien couldn't help but feel exasperated. She really wanted to burn this bastard to ashes. This ridiculous man had caused his Jojo to be captured by a nightmare. She must have recalled that annoying nightmare again and been frightened by some of the things in the nightmare. Xiaomu really did sleep a bit deeply this time. It wasn't until dawn that she showed signs of waking up. When Emolien saw her little hand move, she hurriedly moved to the side of the brocade couch and looked at her. Jojo. Arbor fluttered her long eyelashes and opened her eyes. For a moment, she looked blankly at Emolien. Lien. She wanted to raise her hand for a hug, but when she moved her wrist, she heard the frightening sound of the chain clanking. Don't be afraid, Jojo. Don't worry, it's fine now. We've already found a way to undo the Twin Star Immortal Spirit bracelets. Seeing the little girl's expression change slightly, and about to turn hostile, Emolien hurriedly went forward and hugged her, patting her back comfortingly. All right, let's undo the Twin Star Immortal Spirit bracelets now. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal grabbed ACI, who was sitting on the floor, and pulled him to the little girl's side. Arbor glared at him angrily, then turned her head and shrunk into Emolien's embrace. ACI looked on unhappily. Suddenly, he pulled hard on the copper bracelet on his wrist. What are you doing? Emolien quickly grabbed the other end to prevent him from pulling hard and hurting Arbor's wrist again. You're asking for a beating, aren't you? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal kicked ACI in exasperation. Don't play tricks. Hurry up and undo it. Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for your clansmen. ACI looked coldly at the two of them, then turned to look at Arbor. I didn't do it on purpose. What's the point of saying all this now? It doesn't matter if you did it on purpose or not. You scared Jojo. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal rolled his eyes at ACI. All right. Hurry up and undo it. Cut the crap. I didn't do it on purpose. Yas stiffened his neck and glared at Arbor solemnly. Arbor didn't even bother to look back at him. He hid in Emolien's arms with a displeased expression and didn't say a word. Yas only felt that his heart was suffocating. He wanted to say something else, but when he came into contact with North Prince Mo's cold and ruthless gaze, he couldn't help but be startled. We guarantee that if you continue to speak nonsense, those clansmen that came with you, including your sister-in-law, will all die within my northernmost borders today. Are you trying to start a war with the Aikido tribe? So be it. The Crown Prince smiled disdainfully at him. A loser isn't worth mentioning. You lost to me once, so you will lose to me 100 or 1,000 times over. If the Crown Prince became willful, he was an existence that even northernmost great king was afraid of. ACI shut his mouth and stood up to walk to Arbor's side. He raised his hand. Let's begin. 2 streams of pure wood spirit energy were injected into the copper rings from their respective bodies. With 2 clicks, the copper ring in Arbor's hand instantly sprang open and landed in Emolien's hand. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and the spiritual weapon was instantly devoured by the black fire in his hand, turning into a pile of dust. ACI couldn't help but be slightly alarmed. He glanced at Emolien before turning to Arbor and saying, "Count it as my rashness this time. Fragmented consciousness." Chapter 1459. But you were in the wrong too. If you hadn't run off the moment you saw me, I wouldn't have. Arbor and Emolien turned to glare at him at the same time. ACI took a deep breath. Okay, it's my fault. To make it up to you, how about this? Don't you need a medicine man? I can be your medicine man. My body is strong anyway. I'm not afraid of you drugging me. Assie's eyes lit up as he suddenly spoke. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at him, as if he was an idiot. Bring it on. ACI closed his eyes and made up his mind. He made up his mind to let Arbor vent his anger. He wouldn't cry out in pain. Arbor couldn't be bothered with this person. He glanced at him from the corner of his eyes, then shrank back into Emolienne's arms. Scram! Emolienne kicked him in annoyance. She carried the little fellow and walked into the inner room. Hey, stinky girl. ACI frowned, extremely displeased. Why was she looking at him with disdain when he wanted to be a medicine man? Big brother. Ollie walked quickly to his side and said angrily, Big brother, you've been beaten up so badly by them. Are we just going to let this go? He looked at his big brother's handsome face, which was now bruised and swollen. There was even a bruise on his eye. Ollie was furious, but had nowhere to vent it. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sat on a round-backed chair at the side. He crossed his legs and glanced at him. What, do you want to continue? Master, don't talk to this person. The little python bull swam around Assie's legs and gave the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal a wary look. This person was clearly an immortal supremacy. Why would he appear in the lower star domain? He was different from a sacred beast that had been contracted by its master. It was too strange for an immortal supremacy to appear in such a place. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sat there calmly, and even asked the palace maids to brew a pot of tea for him. A certain immortal supremacy, who was holding a teacup and enjoying himself, chuckled and gave the little python bull a look. What, are you waiting for me to make you leave? Bah! The little python bull immediately swam around ACI. Master, let's go. This place did not welcome them, so why should they stay and provoke others? Yas hesitated for a moment and glanced at the inner chamber. Big bro, what are you looking at? Let's go. Ollie couldn't help but pull Yas back. Big brother Yas, since they've already chased us out, why are we still standing here? Akir asked in a neutral tone. What do you know? He hadn't reconciled with the little girl yet. He was worried that if he left like this, the next time they met, the little girl would be even colder to him. It's all that North Prince Mo's fault. He's such a busybody. No, there was also this celestial venerable in front of him. He was even more annoying. Yas reluctantly walked out of the Eastern Palace's bedchamber. He turned his head to take a look, his expression somewhat irritated. At this time, Arbor, who had been carried into the inner room by Emolienne, was leaning on him with a sad expression, his little head drooping listlessly. Jojo. Emolienne carefully applied the ointment on the red marks on her wrist. She lowered her head and asked softly, Are you feeling better? Does it still hurt? Arbor shook her little head and turned to look at him. He's sick. Emolienne nodded. That's right. He's very sick. Although Emolienne said that, he was deep in thought. Could it be that Yas had not forgotten his Jojo all these years? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Why did he meet such a fool? Chapter 1460. Jojo. Emolienne placed the little fellow on his lap and looked at her seriously. Were you trapped by a nightmare? Arbor nodded and reached out to hug his neck. She rubbed against him like a small animal and said pitifully, Someone whipped me. It hurts. Emolienne's eyes flashed with anger. Who? Arbor shook her head. I couldn't see her face clearly, but if I see her again, I'll definitely recognize her. Emolienne patted her back twice and carried her to the bed. Don't think too much. We'll make them pay back what they owe us. You should sleep for a while more. At this moment, the little fellow looked dispirited and especially tired, which made Emolienne's heart ache immensely. Jojo, I'll only be at ease if you're fine. Emolienne murmured softly, as he half laid her down on the bed with him. He reached out to stroke the furry back of her head. Sleep, I'll watch over you. Arbor tilted her head and laid on top of him. She reached out to hug his waist and snuggled into his arms. You don't have to go to court today. No, I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay here and accompany you. Emolienne patted her lightly. All right, don't talk. Be a good girl and go to sleep. We'll talk when you're fully rested. Xiaomu mumbled a muffled MHM. She rested her head on his chest and heard his steady and powerful heartbeat. Soon she drifted off to sleep. Emolienne gently held her little hand. He wanted to use the medicine to treat the red marks on her wrist, but when he looked at it he was stunned. Her little wrist was white and tender, and there was no trace of the red marks. TSK, the little fellow's recovery ability was a bit shocking. Even if he had his own medicine, he might not be able to recover so quickly. Crown Prince Mo's thin lips lightly kissed her small, fair wrist before he shifted his body and slid out from under the little fellow's body. He then placed her properly on the bed and covered her small stomach with a thin blanket. Emolien flicked his finger, and a defensive boundary appeared in the bedroom. He then quickly pushed open the door and left. Take care of this person on the way back. Emolien waved his hand indifferently, and the dozen or so hidden figures quickly left. Huifeng appeared next to the crown prince with his head lowered and said softly, Lightning's team knows they didn't protect you well, so they've already returned to Marshall Mountain to receive their punishment. When he thought of Lightning's unlucky brothers, Huifeng couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Crown Prince Mo's gaze flickered, and he nodded apathetically. Got it. Aoyi and the others. Yes. Aoyi is still reliable, Your Highness. When Huifeng thought of that big brother Aoyi, he couldn't help but praise him. Humph. The Crown Prince said with dissatisfaction. Have Mei Yi lead the team and eliminate them. Just tell us what mystic weapons and spirit weapons you need. But what if young Master Assie's group doesn't return so quickly, and they might have to stay in our Guanlan city for a while? Huifeng asked weakly. Then let them live for a few more days, the Crown Prince said with a cold expression. When the time comes, I'll have Little Seven accompany them to deal with that ancient python bull. Leave the rest to Mei Yi and the others. They must not leave a single one alive. Yes. Huifeng silently lit a candle for ACI in his heart. Good luck to you, young Master ACI. Chapter 1461. Hey, that kid isn't an ordinary person. You'll be in big trouble if you kill them so rashly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal chuckled as he glanced at Emolien with a cup in his hand. You're so long-winded. Humph. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal rolled his eyes. I'm reminding you out of the goodness of my heart. You don't know how to appreciate my kindness. After all, that kid has something like a poison-repelling fruit in his body. You should know very well that there's no such thing in this shabby minor starfield. That young Master ACI should be from the upper 3 continents, right? His identity is probably not simple. I just don't know if he's from the Divine Continent, the Tsang Continent, or the Underworld Continent. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal winked with a smile. By the way, how's my Jojo doing now? Who's your Jojo? How annoying. Emolien glared at him fiercely. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked aggrieved. She summoned me. I'm hers and she's mine. If she's not mine, then whose? You. He couldn't be bothered to say anything more to this scoundrel. The truth was that Jojo was his wife. It was that simple. At the same time, in a dilapidated temple on Shilua Street, hundreds of masked men in black had gathered here. Master has ordered that the operation will be brought forward. Everyone is to prepare for the operation in 3 days. The middle-aged man under the metal demon mask issued the latest order with a cold expression. Yes. The Rakshasa princess led a group of Rakshasa ghost sect disciples and stood respectfully at the very back. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to make a sound. Everyone, go back and rest for now. Wait for orders. After the man with the metal demon mask finished speaking, he vanished from the dilapidated temple like a wisp of smoke. The Rakshasa princess heaved a sigh of relief. The man's presence was too oppressive. She almost couldn't stand still just now. This was the difference between the great spiritual realm and the ordinary spiritual realm. However, the Rakshasa princess had just heaved a sigh of relief when she suddenly realized that the man with the metal demon mask had appeared beside her. Rakshasa. There was a hint of coldness in his voice, causing the Rakshasa princess to shiver inexplicably and nod repeatedly. If this operation fails again, I think there's no need for you to exist anymore. Princess Luasha's pupils constricted. She nodded and stuttered. I will not disappoint you, Hall Master. A cold light flashed through the eyes under the iron ghost mask. He nodded and said, Rakshasa, don't disappoint me again. Then, he disappeared from Princess Luasha's side. This time, he had left for real. However, even after he left, Princess Luosha still felt weak all over, unable to muster any strength. It was as if she had been drenched from head to toe by the rain. Her legs were so weak that she couldn't move at all. Hundreds and thousands of men in black disappeared from the ruined temple. Princess Luosha clenched her fists. Last time, the rice distribution incident didn't cause many casualties, which caused her master's plan to fail again. That Prince Emo was truly a troublesome opponent. He could see through her master's plans time and time again. She hoped that everything would go smoothly this time. Speaking of which, why didn't her master take care of such a strong opponent once and for all? This thought flashed through Princess Luosha's mind, but she didn't dare think about it anymore. How would she dare guess her master's thoughts? Chapter 1462. But the Raksha princess simply couldn't figure it out. At the very least, Master's underground village had been destroyed by Prince Mo's men several times in a row. It was impossible for Master not to resent such a great loss, especially that time in the Mystic Beast Forest. In the end, such a large deployment was easily destroyed by the people Crown Prince Emo sent. Their organization's largest underground base on Seacombe Planet was subsequently disbanded. It had to be known that they had used the news of the Phoenix Egg with great difficulty to lure so many people to the Mystic Beast Forest, all for the sake of Master had suffered at the hands of this Prince Emo 2 or 3 times in a row. With Master's personality, it was impossible for her to continue lying low. This time, she would certainly teach the Northern Prince Emo an unforgettable lesson. When she thought of this, the Raksha princess curled her lips into a gorgeous yet callous smile. Pop, pop, pop. Firecrackers rang out as the vassal prince of Annan and Commandery Princess Ian's lively wedding ceremony proceeded rapidly in a strange atmosphere. Commandery Princess Ian was a young lady who had married out of the palace, and she was also the Queen Dowager's adopted granddaughter in name. As a result, her dowry was arranged according to the highest princess-like scale. Logically speaking, this should be a grand wedding. It was only slightly inferior to the Crown Prince's wedding. Not to mention most of the high-ranking officials in the court, even some members of the sex and patrician families, also attended this grand wedding out of respect. Yet who knew at this moment? The people attending the wedding ceremony all felt their scalps tingle. Not to mention the groom's seething malice. What was going on with him? Which inexplicably made people feel a bit scared. Also, what was the meaning of this groom cough? That obvious row of teeth marks on his chin. The funniest thing was that his left eye was swollen and bruised, which made it very awkward. Not only did it affect the vassal prince's looks, but it also made him look a bit more comical. When the vassal prince led Commandery Princess Ian into the vassal prince of Annan's estate, while holding the other end of the red silk ribbon, everyone felt a seething killing intent. Fuck. Wasn't this a grand wedding? Why did it look like a funeral? That there was something wrong with the vassal prince's expression. The crown prince looked as if he had lost his parents. His face was taut, and he did not smile from beginning to end. Was it really a good idea to hold a wedding like this? There was also that Commandery Princess Ian, who was reluctantly tugging at the end of the red silk with small steps. She would pause twice after taking a step, causing the vassal prince to continuously turn around to glare at her. Cough, cough. This wedding ceremony was really the strangest one they had seen recently. Ian gripped the end of the red silk tightly as she asked Sue, who was beside her, in a low voice. Did the crown prince come over? No, I didn't. Sue was about to cry. What happened the night before was like a nightmare. Her miss had not even entered the house, but she had already become a joke in the entire residence. Now, not to mention vassal Prince Yi, even the vassal king of Annan and the vassal king Consort also disliked her very, very much. Damn lass, you didn't give the letter to Xiao 11Z? Ian grabbed Suer's arm, her sharp nails nearly digging into her flesh. Suer whimpered. Miss Suer gave it to you. I gave the letter to eunuch Xiao 11Z woo-woo. Then how come his highness didn't come? Miss, I heard that the crown princess got a fright yesterday, so the crown prince didn't even attend morning court today. He stayed in the Eastern Palace to accompany the crown princess, Sue said aggrievedly. Chapter 1463. Impossible. Commandery Princess Ian simply could not accept this news. He actually didn't even go to morning court for that little bitch? She really is a bewitching little vixen. Commandery Princess Ian gripped Sewer's arm tightly and stopped walking forward. The red carpet from the patio to the main hall was only 200 steps away, but they had to stop and walk for more than half a cup of tea's time. And they still hadn't finished walking, that the vassal prince of Anan tightened his grip on the red sash, causing the veins on the back of his hand to bulge. "Let's go," he shouted. His shout almost scared the guests out of their wits. There was something wrong with the atmosphere. Commandery Princess Ian promptly flung the red sash in her hand in a fit of rage. She abruptly lifted the red veil and looked at the vassal prince of Anan frigidly. "Who do you think I am? One of those lowly concubines in your inner court, yelling and shouting at me? Don't forget my identity." When Princess Anam Wu Hongma saw that this daughter-in-law had no regard for her dignity and actually lifted the veil on her own before the wedding ceremony and criticized her son with disdain, she was instantly infuriated. She walked up with the help of someone and raised her sleeve to slap Commandery Princess Ian. "You wicked woman! You shameless bitch! If it weren't for the great king's decree of marriage, do you think that our vassal prince's estate would still tolerate you as the vassal prince consort with your ruined body? You wouldn't even be able to become a maidservant, let alone a lowly concubine." Commandery Princess Ian was so angry that her face flushed red, and she kicked Wu Hongma's waist ruthlessly. "You are the ruined old woman. Wasn't it all thanks to her bitch son that she became like this?" Every time she thought of how her virginity was snatched away by a man who was practically a stranger, Ian was in so much pain that she wished she was dead. Wu Hongma didn't expect Commandery Princess Ian to be so bold and shrewd, daring to kick her mother-in-law as soon as she came up. This was completely inconsistent with her usual image. After Ian kicked Wu Hongma to the ground, the surrounding people started making a fuss about nothing. Vassal Prince Consort. King Consort. The vassal king of Anan was so angry that his face was flushed red, and his entire body was trembling. After their brainless princess consort's shout just now, everyone was looking at the vassal prince of Anan with sympathetic gazes, sympathizing with the lush greenery above his head. How pitiful! According to Princess Anam's meaning, the great king had appointed a withered woman to be the vassal prince of Anan's official wife. That was a little unkind. However, the great king had always been muddle-headed. He would do whatever he wanted to do. It wasn't the first time that he had randomly played matchmaker. However, among the mandarin ducks that he randomly selected, some were filled with happiness, like the crown princess and the crown prince, while some were in so much pain that they wished they were dead, like the pair in front of him. Cough cough. How should I put it? The great king's success rate was 50/50. He wasn't completely muddle-headed. At this time, the vassal prince of Anan Cho Fu, who was clenching his fists, couldn't take it anymore and slapped Commandery Princess Ian's cheek. "Scram back to the palace. I'm going to divorce you." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. At the same time. It couldn't be right. The wedding ceremony hadn't even fucking ended yet, alright? They were going to divorce just like that? These two people's actions seemed even more unkind. Would it infuriate the great king? Shut up. At least there was still a rational vassal prince of Anan among this bunch of irrational people. Chapter 1464. This slap stunned Commandery Princess Ian's entire being. A minute later, Commandery Princess Ian clutched her face and lunged forward, baring her fangs and brandishing her claws like a madwoman. She completely disregarded her dignity and pounced over to bite the vassal prince of Anan. "Seize her!" The old vassal prince of Anan swiftly pointed at Commandery Princess Ian, and several robust maidservants immediately crawled over and pinned Commandery Princess Ian down tightly. They then pinned her hands behind her back and shoved her forward. Wu Hongma had just suffered a loss, so when she saw that this shrew had been subdued, she immediately rushed up and slapped her daughter-in-law with both hands. The old vassal prince of Anan glared hatefully at Princess Anam and felt his old face burning painfully. He had been humiliated by this brainless family. Just look at what day it was today, that so many court officials were present. If this matter landed in the mouths of those people who were at odds with him, it would become a source of idle laughter. What's more, they might even use this to attack him. It was simply abominable. This marriage was personally decreed by the great king. Even if you two are 1,000 times unwilling, you have to restrain your hatred and carry out the wedding ceremony to the end. The old vassal prince of Anan declared with a sullen face. Afterwards, the newlyweds were tied up and brought into the wedding hall. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment, simply at a loss for words. Wasn't this just like an old saying? Don't force a cow to drink water. Seeing this newlyweds being pushed to their knees and forced to perform the 3 kowtow ceremony, everyone looked at each other again, feeling that this wedding ceremony was extremely laughable. Once the ceremony was over, the old vassal prince of Anan immediately ordered for Ian to be tied up and brought back to the bridal chamber. Only the vassal prince of Anan, whose face was bruised and swollen, was left behind. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the guests, he made up an excuse to leave. This wedding banquet was like a funeral banquet. Everyone was distressed and sullen, and after forcing themselves to drink 2 cups, they all made excuses to leave. After all the guests had left, Wu Hongma smashed an exquisite tea set on the spot and cursed indignantly. Look at what kind of daughter-in-law this is. What sin did I, Wu Hongma, commit to have such a daughter-in-law? No, I want to enter the palace. Come back. The vassal king of Anan's face revealed a bit of viciousness. What do you want to do by entering the palace? Do you want to find the great king and scold him? Do you still not understand? The great king is clearly trying to make our Chiu family the laughingstock of the whole world. The vassal king of Anan clenched his fists and snorted. He purposefully betrothed Ian to Fuer. However, I will also make him understand that the vassal king of Anan's estate isn't that easy to bully. The old vassal king of Anan's eyes revealed a trace of ruthless fury as he tightly clenched his fists. Achoo! The great king, who didn't know that he had been tricked by his son and had infuriated the vassal king of Anan's estate by randomly choosing a marriage. At this moment, he was in the royal garden, accompanying his 16-year-old noble lady Ying to recite poems, compose couplets, and admire the flowers. Xiao Mu rubbed her eyes. When she woke up, she looked up slightly and met Crown Prince Mo's phoenix eyes, which were staring at her unwaveringly from up close. She quickly moved her small hands and tried to crawl up. The Crown Prince then helped her sit up in passing. Have you slept enough? Arbor nodded. Seeing how grinning you are, could it be that you have something good to tell me? The Crown Prince smiled. Did you know Ian, this scoundrel, has finally married into the vassal king of Anan's estate? Chapter 1465. Arbor's eyes lit up, and he hooked his finger. She didn't play any tricks? How could she not play any tricks? The Crown Prince pursed his lips and said, She even sent someone to deliver a letter to me yesterday. Where is the letter? Burned it. Arbor looked at him in astonishment. Didn't you see what she said? What could she say? It didn't matter what she said. She was going to be a dead person soon anyway. Arbor glanced at him speechlessly. Perhaps she wanted to tell you some secrets. Secrets? Then let her bring it underground and tell it to the king of hell. The Crown Prince glanced at the little fellow in amusement. What lousy secrets could she have? Don't worry. Arbor also thought that this was true. Ian was merely a girl raised in a boudoir. Even if she had some secrets, it probably didn't mean much to them. She kicked her short legs, and Prince Emo helped her up with a grin. There are still about 20 days before the Heaven Ascension stairway opens. Jojo, you should stay in the cultivation ground and cultivate properly for the next few days. Don't wander around, HM? Arbor looked at him suspiciously. Is something special about to happen? What's so special about it? The Crown Prince stood up with a grin and walked to her side to hold her small hand. It's just that there have been too many mundane matters recently. Look at you, you've even fallen behind in your cultivation. Isn't that bad? MHM, it is bad. Arbor nodded. Your Highness. Xiao 11Z jogged in submissively and reported with a salute. Your Highness, Her Majesty the Queen has sent a verbal edict. She has invited a group of noble ladies from other kingdoms to June Mountain's Yuting court to admire the lotus flowers the day after tomorrow. She has invited the Crown Princess to accompany her. Emolien, that what was going on? He had just instructed the little fellow to behave and stay at home, yet his mother had jumped out to mess things up again. Not going, not going. The crown prince waved his hand impatiently and said, Go and report to Muhu. Tell her that the crown princess hasn't been in good spirits these past 2 days, and needs to recuperate. Arbor blinked but didn't say anything. Since she was married, she had to follow her husband's wishes. Seeing Haiding come in with a bowl of porridge and a few dishes, Arbor sat down and started eating. Yesterday, he had been busy for most of the night, and hadn't eaten much. Now that he smelled the fragrance of the porridge, he was really hungry. Arbor was eating at the side with a spoon when he heard Xiao 11Z say bitterly, That won't do, Your Highness. Her Majesty the Queen has already specified for the Crown Princess to accompany her. If we go back to Her Majesty now, wouldn't it be a little inappropriate? Xiao 11Z cautiously consoled his capricious master. From time to time, he would glance at Arbor with his little eyes. Crown Princess, say something. Arbor looked down at himself in astonishment, then continued to eat the porridge with the spoon. What could she say? She didn't want to go anyway. So it was just nice that her husband was blocking her. Who had the time to admire flowers with a bunch of orioles and swallows? She might as well stay at home and cultivate. Xiao 11Z panicked when he saw this, and he stammered, Your Highness, Crown Prince Consort. Tito and Her Majesty the Queen sent a messenger. She even emphasized that the Crown Prince Consort must accompany them. Emolien frowned and walked outside. I'll go talk to Muhu. Forget it. Arbor pursed his lips and said, If you go talk to her, she'll misunderstand and think that I'm instigating you behind her back again. So be it, she wasn't afraid of anyone. Chapter 1466. Can you tell me now if something has happened? After Xiao 11Z left, Arbor looked towards Emolien with a spoon in her mouth. Emolien helplessly flicked her small forehead. What's the point of being so smart? He sat down beside her. I suspect that organization will make a move again in the near future. Arbor's expression turned solemn, and she put down the spoon in her hand. Right now they're hiding in the dark, while we're out in the open. We have no idea when they're going to make a move, or how they're going to make a move. Emolien nodded. If they want to make a move, your mother's trip to Mount June's Yuting court this time has provided them with a very good opportunity. Emolien nodded again. This little fellow understood immediately, so he didn't need to waste his breath explaining. It's not a good idea if we keep hiding. Arbor stood up and said, Why don't we beat them at their own game, and take the initiative to attack? Emolien sighed softly. He had originally wanted to take the initiative to attack, but the prerequisite was that this little fellow had to stay in the Eastern Palace, and not go anywhere, so that he didn't have any worries. But now, I'll go talk with Royal Mother, and have her cancel this trip. Since he knew there was danger, it wasn't his style to walk in the face of danger. Although Northern Emo Kingdom was powerful enough to look down on the other kingdoms, but if the noble ladies of the other kingdoms were all implicated by the mysterious organization during this trip to Mount June, and innocently lost their lives, then it wouldn't be easy for Northern Mo's great king, and the kings of the other kingdoms to account for it. Arbor grabbed his hand and shook her head. The queen must have already passed down the verbal order to everyone. It wouldn't be good to go back on our word now. Send more people to follow us. Arbor's eyes flashed. She swiped her left hand across the air, and drew out a blue ebony storage talisman. Don't worry. If there's an emergency, I'll knock out all those orioles and swallows and throw them here. Emolien glanced curiously at the talisman in her hand. This storage talisman can store people now? Okay. Arbor was rather pleased with himself. He raised his small head and said, Ever since I became a yellow-level Great Talisman Master, my storage talisman has also risen to a new level. Currently, a single yellow Great Ebony Blue Talisman had a storage space of 50 cubic meters. You can even store living things. Emolien pulled her into his arms and kissed her hard. He praised, My JoJo is amazing. Arbor took out several upgraded storage talismans and stuffed them into Emolien's hands. I'll help you store your things. You can rest assured now. If there's any danger, I'll put them all in the talisman. Then, I'll hide in Paradise Planet. Who can do anything to me? Although what she said sounded very safe, Emolian still felt a little scared. She didn't want her to lure the snake out of its hole and put herself in danger. Jojo, don't worry. Arbor raised her small head and cupped his handsome face. She suddenly smacked her lips against his. Lure them out. It'll be best if we can catch them all in one fell swoop. Arbor shook his small head. He increasingly felt that this method was excellent. Prepare well in secret. Once we're surrounded, bring Situ-E, Duanyu, and the others over to save us. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we coordinate from the inside and outside? Our dear Emolian didn't know whether it was wonderful or not. He only knew that. His wife kissed him. Kissed him. Kissed him. He kissed him. Behind her were Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and a large group of womenfolk. Chapter 1468. The young crown prince consort looked as if she hadn't woken up yet as she followed them from a distance with her head drooped. Haiding followed beside her, wanting to reach out to support her from time to time. To tell the truth, she had originally thought that they would be setting out at noon. Who knew that Her Majesty the Queen would be in such a hurry, having everyone gather at the crack of dawn? Xiaomu inwardly yawned and sleepily raised her eyes. The moment she raised her eyes, he saw Ian glaring at him with animosity. She was crazy. The young crown princess glared back, not to be outdone. This female scoundrel kept trying to seduce her husband. Humph, she would teach her a good lesson later. She would let this female scoundrel know why flowers were so red. She had to find a secluded place and teach her a good lesson. Looking at the sneaky foot that had appeared in front of her, the young crown princess directly stomped on it forcefully without a change in her expression. Only a gotcha sound was heard, accompanied by a blood-curdling scream. The group of young masters and noble ladies at the bottom of the stairs all turned around and looked up at a certain woman who was rolling down the stairs. Over 100 steps of stairs. This woman was truly in a sorry state as she rolled down. She had rolled all the way to the bottom and had almost bumped into a certain young master's thigh. Fortunately, that young master had dodged in time, evading her with a sidestep. As a result, that woman didn't manage to stop in time after rolling down, and she crashed into the carriage's wheel with a bang before coming to a stop. That horse was so startled that it raised its hooves and neighed. Just as that horse's hooves were about to land and break the woman's neck, Duanyu flicked his sleeve, and a pebble hit that horse's leg with a whoosh. The horse flipped over in pain and fell heavily to the ground, lying side by side with that unlucky woman. The woman and horse neighed continuously. Crown Prince Emo raised his phoenix eyes and glanced at her in amusement. Empress Zhao creased her brows as she quickly walked down the stairs with a group of royal concubines to the side of the carriage. Looking at that woman who was hugging her leg and rolling on the ground while wailing in a cold sweat, she couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Sister. The Marquis of Placation's estate's fourth Miss, Su Mingxin, turned pale with fright as she ran forward and hastily reached out to support Su Mingzhu. The woman who had just disgraced herself by rolling down the stairs was the third Miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate, Su Mingzhu. Su Mingzhu hugged her legs and rolled back and forth on the ground. When she saw Her Majesty the Queen walking over, she hastily rolled in front of her and cried out with a mournful expression, "Your Majesty! Please judge clearly, Your Majesty. I beg you to uphold justice for this subject's daughter." Empress Zhao coldly glanced at her. So it's the Marquis of Placation's estate's third Mississippi. How could you be so careless? Someone, go to the Imperial Physician building and summon a bone-setting expert Imperial Physician to take a look at Miss Su's leg. Su Mingzhu shuddered. She knew that Empress Zhao was warning her not to talk nonsense. But she couldn't accept it. Su Mingzhu hardened her heart and gritted her teeth. She wailed, "Your Highness, Mingzhu wasn't careless. Someone pushed Mingzhu down. Someone wants Mingzhu's life." Empress Zhao couldn't help but fly into a rage. "You better think carefully before you speak." Empress Zhao couldn't quite wipe away the embarrassment that this incident had happened before they even set out. She instantly didn't have a favorable impression of this third miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate. Unexpectedly, the third miss was brainless. She didn't see through Empress Zhao's anger, and even pointed in a direction as she shouted sternly, "Her, it's her! She pushed me!" Chapter 1469. It's her, it's her! She pushed me! Su Mingzhu's eyes revealed a hint of smugness. Everyone turned to look, and immediately saw the young crown prince consort looking all around. She then shifted her small feet to dodge to the side. Duan Yu, Situ Yi, and the others involuntarily twitched their mouths. The direction Su Mingzhu's finger was pointing at was precisely the young crown princess's direction. However, that little fellow didn't seem to understand at all, and even looked around in confusion. When she saw someone else pointing at her, she even innocently dodged to the side. Her, "You're pointing at the wrong person" expression was simply infuriating. Su Mingzhu was furious, and she kowtowed to Empress Zhao while weeping pitifully, begging Your Majesty to uphold justice. It's her, it's the crown princess pushed me. Whoa. This subject's lowly words carry little weight. Begging Your Majesty to uphold justice for this subject. I didn't push you. The young crown princess wasn't an idiot. How could she not speak up when someone else pointed at her like that? Besides, she naturally wouldn't admit to it since she didn't do it. You pushed me. How could this subject not know who pushed the subject? Su Mingzhu was inwardly resentful. This crown princess was actually someone who dared to do it, but didn't dare to admit it? Wasn't she very fearless? Why was she acting like a coward now? The young crown princess was angry, and a harsh glint flashed across her eyes. Who has the leisure to push you? You put your leg in front of me yourself, so who am I supposed to step on if not you? Haiding nodded repeatedly on the side and said with a straight face, That's right. This servant can testify for the crown princess. This miss doesn't even know how to walk properly, and would stretch her leg in front of the crown princess, after walking for a while. The crown prince consort is only stepping on her feet. Everyone. Su Mingzhu suddenly wailed and kowtowed repeatedly in front of Empress Zhao. Your Majesty is wise. The crown princess admitted to pushing me. She didn't step on me, she pushed me. Pushed me. Since when did I not walk properly? Of course, the servant by her side would speak up for her. Your Highness. Empress Zhao felt a headache coming on. She turned to look at the little crown princess, and massaged her aching head. She felt a little regretful. Perhaps he shouldn't have invited the crown princess to attend this event? She still remembered that when she mentioned to the concubines yesterday that they had called the young crown princess to accompany them on this trip to Mount June. Everyone looked like they had eaten a fly. Even now, when she thought about it, the memory was still fresh in her mind. Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and other veteran concubines even repeatedly asked her to exempt the crown princess from this exhausting trip to Mount June. Now that she thought about it, the crown prince consort must have done something out of line in the past to intimidate all of them. What's the fuss about? Arbor's voice was cold as he glared daggers at Su Mingzhu. Those who were familiar with her immediately cursed inwardly. The little fellow was really angry this time. Prince Emma was just about to step forward to comfort his wife, when he saw an afterimage glide past him with a whoosh. The crown prince's eyebrows immediately twitched. When everyone looked over, they saw the little crown princess carrying the screaming Su Mingzhu, and climbing to the top of the steps in a matter of minutes. A bad premonition slid through everyone's hearts. The great king and Empress Zhao both looked over in shock at the same time, and the corners of their eyes twitched. Sure enough, the crown prince consort stretched out her leg, and kicked Su Mingzhu's, but with a kick. Chapter 1470. Su Mingzhu's mouth instantly formed an O shape, but she didn't have time to scream before she rolled headfirst onto the steps. She cut an extremely sorry figure again, and even rolled down even more ruthlessly. Everyone was flabbergasted, and simply didn't know what to say. Empress Zhao reflexively shifted to the side, and stared blankly as Su Mingzhu rolled down the steps. In the end, she even forcefully crashed into the wheel of the same carriage before abruptly coming to a stop. Su Mingzhu was completely stupefied from this fall, and she could only hear her useless fourth sister, Su Mingxin, screaming. Something soft seemed to flow out of her ears, and Su Mingzhu only felt like her head had been forcefully smashed by a large hammer. She was groggy and couldn't hear clearly at all. She had completely fainted, scaring Su Mingxin, who was kneeling on the side, so much so that she almost fainted as well. The crown princess's kick was too ruthless and directly knocked her unconscious. Arbor calmly floated down the steps and patted his small hands as he softly said, "Did you all see? As you all can see, this was indeed my kick." Duan Yu raised his fan to block his face. Situi twitched his mouth and rolled his eyes at him. "Don't think that no one can see you snickering just because you're blocking your face with a fan. Everyone." Xiaomi couldn't resist sniggering. She ran up and hooked her arm around Arbor's shoulder as she exclaimed, "Sis, I just like your personality. We're truly the same. What we did is what we did, and what we didn't do is what we didn't do. Since someone said that we kicked her down the stairs, then we might as well solidify this reputation of kicking people." Ha 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 ha. Everyone looked at Princess Mi speechlessly. "You dunce, can you stop laughing?" Empress Zhao took a deep breath and inwardly warned herself, don't be angry. The daughter-in-law is our family's daughter-in-law, and our son has acknowledged her. Don't be angry. Ah, so angry. They hadn't fucking set out yet, but she already made such a scene. How shameless was she?" Consort Chung glanced sympathetically at Empress Zhao before hastily stepping forward to help Empress Zhao up. She quietly said, "Your Highness, in my opinion, this third miss of the Marquis of Placation's estate should be sent home to recuperate. Then fourth miss, let her accompany third miss back." What else could he do? Even if he had fainted from the fall, he couldn't be carried on the road. Empress Zhao glared at Arbor in annoyance. She allowed the green mammy to help her into the carriage, and ordered people to send the two young misses of the Marquis of Placation's estate back. Nyang, calm down. Quickly drink some water first." Green mammy hurriedly handed her a cup of tea. Empress Zhao slammed her cup on the table. She was so angry. Along the way, Consort Chung and the others felt uneasy. Actually, Consort Chung didn't want to come today. Don't ask her why. Ever since the prayer event at the Honghai Temple's Nimpin Tower, Consort Chung swore that she would never go out with the little crown princess in this lifetime. Going out with the little crown princess was simply too torturous. But this time, it was Her Majesty the Queen who had personally sent out the invitation. Fortunately, the person leading the group was Her Majesty the Queen, so the incident at the Nimpin Tower wouldn't happen again. That time, the young crown prince consort had really tormented their old bones to the point of choking them. Every time she thought about it, Consort Chung couldn't help but shudder. "I quickly look. June Mountain's Yuting Court is right in front. TSK. Looking at it from afar, the scenery is delightful. It's really beautiful." Xiaomi fussed. "See you tomorrow." Chapter 1471. June Mountain's Yuting Court. From afar, one could see the continuous rise and fall of the mountains, which were steep and straight. In the center of the jade green courtyard, 3 sides were surrounded by water. The scenery was beautiful and pleasant. Once they arrived at their destination, Princess Mi impatiently hopped out of the carriage. She stretched out her arms and made a hugging gesture as she giggled. Good. No zombies or mutated beasts, and such a large jade green lake can be maintained. The trees provide shade, and the fragrance of flowers assails the nostrils. Ha, I like this place." Arbor lifted the curtain and expressionlessly crawled out of the carriage. Hearing Princess Mi's words, for some reason, she actually subconsciously looked back and forth. Haidang immediately assumed a defensive posture and vigilantly looked around before whispering, "Crown Princess, as Princess Mi said, there are no mutated zombies or zombie beasts appearing." Xiaomi's mouth twitched, and she glanced at Arbor from the corner of her eyes. Younger sister, your bodyguard is rather interesting. He also appears to be very skilled." At this time, the noble ladies of the other kingdoms and the young misses of the patrician families all crawled out of their accompanying carriages and looked at the beautiful scenery in front of them with pleasant surprise. Her Majesty the Queen's mood improved greatly, and she said to everyone with a smile, "This place is the same as June Mountain's Wang family's hunting ground. There are people specially assigned to watch over this place." As expected of Northern Mo's fortifications, Southern Bailey's fifth Princess Baileyjin couldn't help but sigh. To be able to plan such a large fortification in such an orderly manner, the entire fortification, from the building defense to the perfect protection mechanism, and the deployment of personnel, could be seen from every aspect of it, that it was extraordinary. June Mountain's Yiting Court didn't seem to have changed much from the environment before the zombie outbreak. Previously, some mutated zombie beasts appeared in the lake here, but there weren't many of them, so they were promptly dealt with. Now there are about 70 to 80% fewer aquatic animals in this body of water. Empress Zhao sighed. "Everyone, don't worry. Let's board the ship first." "Your Majesty, please." Everyone courteously let her go first. Docked at the shore was an exquisite and gorgeous 3-story pleasure boat. Under the sunlight, the top of the pleasure boat, which was outlined with glazed tiles, flickered with a very dazzling light. Under the lead of Empress Zhao, the group boarded the pleasure boat one by one. The boat slowly left the shore and headed towards the center of the lake. Yiting Court was located on a small island in the middle of the green water. From afar, it looked as if it was being embraced by a pool of clear water. The green leaves appeared to be full of vitality in people's eyes. That should be a world that hasn't been polluted, everyone thought excitedly. Arbor was also curious. It was her first time here. Unexpectedly, there was such a strange courtyard in the vicinity of Mount June. It existed independently in this world. Nyang Nyang, since this Yiting Court has not been contaminated by zombie beasts, why not move here? Jin Hongwan from Northern Wei's Jin clan fort was a straightforward girl. She couldn't help but be curious when she saw that the environment here was so beautiful and lush that it surpassed even the royal palace. Empress Zhao explained with a smile. Previously, there were mutated beasts roaming about, but the imperial court had always sent people to take care of this place, and many small operations teams to complete missions here. Look, there are almost no aquatic animals in this lake. Chapter 1472. Everyone lowered their heads to look at the awe-inspiring surface of the lake. Sure enough, the water was incomparably clear, and there weren't even many small fish in the water. This Yiting Court is only a small resort after all. How can it fit so many people from the palace? Consort Chung continued with a smile. Jin Hongwan couldn't help but be taken aback before saying with a smile. It was Hongwan who didn't think things through. She only thought that it wasn't easy to have a pure land in this chaotic world. But she didn't consider that there were already several hundred concubines in Northern Mo's great king's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. Not to mention the many eunuchs, palace maids, and guards. Where could they fit people? A small Yiting court could fit 3 palaces, but it couldn't fit 6 courtyards. Empress Zhao waved her hand with a smile, and the group followed the current to the front of the island. After reaching the shore, everyone went ashore in a single file, and excitedly followed Empress Zhao into Yiting Court. Since this courtyard was used as the Wang family's leisure resort, it was naturally meticulously taken care of. Today, Her Majesty the Queen was bringing honored guests over. So early in the morning, the steward of the resort led a group of servants to wait in front of the courtyard. When he saw the Queen's group arrive, he hurriedly went forward to welcome them in with a fawning smile. The steward was a middle-aged man with a fat head and big ears. It seemed that he lived quite freely in this Yiting Court. "Your Majesty, honored guests, please follow this humble one." That steward cheerfully led everyone into the inner court. Will everyone be first assigned to a courtyard to stay in? Or will this humble one first bring honored guests to tour Yiting Court? We didn't spend much time on this carriage journey, so we shouldn't be tired. Queen Zhao looked at everyone with a chuckle and said, "Steward Hu, please lead us around this court for a while." "All right. After you, Your Majesty, honored guests." Steward Hu smiled until his chubby white face squeezed out streaks of flesh. At this time, a pampered voice resounded. "This princess heard that your Yiting Court has a type of bamboo shoot that is extremely delicious and delightful to eat. Moreover, after eating it, one would feel that their profound energy is much more abundant. Is this true? Steward, who was a person with good eyesight. The moment he turned his head, he immediately realized that the one who was stirring up trouble was the fourth princess of the royal family, Emo Shuang, the famous unruly princess. He hurriedly nodded and smiled apologetically. Fourth princess is right. However, the production of this spiritual bamboo shoot was extremely low throughout the year. Especially in the past 3 years, it had basically reached the point of extinction. The small amount of spiritual bamboo shoots produced every year are also presented to the Empress Dowager and the Great King. After saying that, he looked at fourth princess Emo Shuang with a troubled expression, as if he wanted to say something but stopped himself. It was said that this fourth princess was a normal person and had nothing to do with a mystic cultivator. He didn't know why she suddenly thought of this. So what if spirit bamboo shoots can subtly raise one's profound strength? You, the fourth princess, don't even have a fart of profound strength, so eating it would just be a waste. Where is it? The young crown princess glanced curiously at Steward Hu. When Steward Hu saw this, he hurriedly cupped his hands towards the young crown princess, his expression clearly flattering. Crown princess, please follow this humble one. This humble one can bring honored guests over to take a look. It's just that we haven't picked any fresh spiritual bamboo shoots this year. As he spoke, he sighed and brought everyone to the bank of a stream. He pointed at the rows of bamboo on the bank of the stream and said, Your Majesty, honored guests, this place is called Qingxi. The spiritual bamboo shoots are over there. Chapter 1473. Xiaomu pattered over to a thin bamboo that was more than a meter tall and flicked it with her finger. This bamboo was thin and short, and it didn't have any ornamental value. It was completely incomparable to the bamboo forest that the Holy Water Sect's old sect master had raised back then. Master, these really are spiritual bamboo shoots. Qiuqiu's voice abruptly rang out. Then, without needing her to lift a finger, 2 thin and soft vines had already burrowed out of her sleeves and directly dug up the ground, dragging in a small section of bamboo shoot. Hee hee. Qiuqiu laughed happily. Master, you're in luck. Walk further in, and we'll dig up more spiritual bamboo shoots. At that time, we can also plant a bamboo forest on Paradise Planet. How about it? The more Qiuqiu spoke, the more excited it became. In the future, our Paradise Planet will have flowers, bamboos, and trees. Ha ha ha, don't you feel especially perfect? Arbor nodded and then asked, flowers? Jasper begonia. Qiuqiu smiled proudly and said, Master, I helped you plant a large sea of jasper begonia flowers. Do you like them? Come in and play if you have nothing to do. Arbor couldn't help but find it funny. She didn't expect that this little fellow would also steal the jasper begonia from her inner world into the paradise. Don't drop the original pot. We still have to return it to grandmother later, Arbor exhorted. Don't worry. Originally, there was a sumera seed inside that jasper begonia that was wreaking havoc. Master, I took out the sumera seed and planted it in the 100 Poison Valley. Is that so? Arbor couldn't help but feel astonished. This sumera seed was a type of poisonous grass seed. Why would it fall into the jasper begonia and almost kill it? It really was a bit strange. As Arbor spoke with Qiuqiu, she walked further into the clear stream and had Qiuqiu display its bandit nature. It dug up all the spiritual bamboo shoots that could be picked and dragged them back to the paradise. Master, with little earth and little water's help now, the spiritual tea will probably take a while to grow. However, this spirit bamboo shoot doesn't have that many requirements. I reckon that if we raise it in our paradise for a few days, we'll be able to eat it soon. I saw that you dug up a lot of spiritual bamboo shoots. How could this caretaker who say that there are no spiritual bamboo shoots? Is he being dishonest? That's obvious. Qiuqiu chuckled. This guy doesn't speak the truth. There's an 80% chance he's hiding something. Arbor knew what was going on and purposely kicked away the soil beside the stream so that the only spiritual bamboo shoot that Qiuqiu hadn't dug away could be seen. This bamboo shoot was simply too small and ugly, so Qiuqiu didn't like it. Fourth Princess Emo Shuang's eyes were sharp, and she couldn't help but cry out when she saw it. Isn't that a spiritual bamboo shoot? Steward Hu, why did you say that you didn't find any spiritual bamboo shoots this year? Are you hiding something from Her Majesty the Queen? Oh my, in all honesty, how would I dare to deceive you all? Steward Hu's expression didn't change, and his heart didn't skip a beat. Look at this little bamboo shoot. It's so crooked and wilted. In what way does it look like a spiritual bamboo shoot? Furthermore, if you all don't believe me, I can immediately have the servants cook this bamboo shoot for everyone to taste. This is definitely the most ordinary bamboo shoot, and not a spiritual bamboo shoot. Haitang, where's the pot? The pot is here. Haitang took out a small black pot from her inner world and hugged it to her chest. She asked the Crown Princess with a serious expression. Crown Princess, should we cook it now? The little Crown Princess nodded vigorously. Cook it and taste it. Yes, Crown Princess. Chapter 1474. Seeing that everyone else was looking over dumbfoundedly, Haitang took out firewood and a rack from her inner world and placed the small black pot on top of it without another word. He casually took out a match and lit a fire. Then, he began to scrub the pot with the same method as before. After the water boiled, she threw the small bamboo shoots into the pot. The little Crown Princess also took out a handful of noodles from her inner world, along with some ready-made shredded meat. Everyone looked at this master and servant pair dumbfoundedly. They were. Doing what? I, a younger sister. I suddenly realized that I'm so hungry after smelling the aroma. It turns out that it's almost time for lunch. Give me a bowl later too. Xiaomi took out a bowl and chopsticks from her inner world and squatted next to the pot, staring at it eagerly. Empress Zhao's mouth twitched as she gazed speechlessly at this daughter-in-law. Commandery Princess Ian, who was walking next to her, couldn't help but laugh. Is the Crown Princess cooking lunch? There's no share for you. Arbor gazed at her coldly before having Haitang scatter the noodles. It wasn't long before the pot of delicious and fragrant shredded meat and spiritual bamboo shoot noodles was finished. By this time, everyone had noticed that Manager Hu, who was standing on the side, had beads of cold sweat on his forehead, looking like he would faint at any moment. Empress Zhao's heart jolted, and she sent a look to the green mammy. Nanny Qing understood. With a wave of her hand, more than a dozen guards came out from the dark and formed a fan-shaped encirclement. They surrounded Steward Hu, who was covered in cold sweat. Arbor took out a stack of bowls and filled a small half-bowl for Empress Zhao, Mou, Xiaomi, and Beilizhen. He had people pass it to them, and he and Haitang also got half a bowl each. The remaining half of the pot was left there for everyone to use. When everyone saw Empress Zhao and the others drink the soup in one gulp, their eyes narrowed into slits, looking very pleased. He hurriedly rushed forward to snatch the remaining half pot of noodle soup. There were no more noodles left, but there was still some soup to drink. Those who were quick in grabbing quickly poured themselves half a bowl of soup, while those who were slow in grabbing could only watch helplessly. Mo Shuang and Yang Fengyan almost fought over 2 mouthfuls of soup. In the end, Mo Shuang gave a look to the accompanying guards to subdue Yang Fengyan, and she poured the last 2 mouthfuls of soup into her mouth. Once she drank it, whether her profound strength rose or not, it had nothing to do with her. In any case, she was just an ordinary person without any profound strength. She only felt that her mouth was overflowing with a fresh fragrance, and the 2 mouthfuls of spirit bamboo shoot soup simply left a rich aftertaste. How dare you? How dare you deceive the Empress Dowager and the Great King? Empress Zhao's face instantly darkened. 2 guards immediately stepped forward and kicked Caretaker Hu, who was sweating profusely, to his knees. Manager Hu hurriedly complained. Your Majesty the Queen, please judge clearly. This lowly one doesn't dare to deceive the Great King and the Empress Dowager. This lowly one really didn't know that the spirit bamboo shoots had already sprouted. If this lowly one knew, this lowly one would naturally have sent people to dig them up and present them to your Majesty the Empress Dowager. You're full of nonsense. Empress Zhao angrily rebuked. Tie him up. Search his residence. Manager Hu's face was filled with terror. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. These spirit bamboo shoots were clearly buried deep underground. and it wasn't as easy to dig up as ordinary bamboo shoots. Even he, who was stationed in this Yiting court all year round, accompanied by this bamboo forest, could only occasionally dig up 1 or 2 stalks of spirit bamboo shoots. Why was it that the crown princess could casually step on a stalk of spirit bamboo shoot? Very quickly, the people who were searching manager whose residence ran back to report to Empress Zhao. Chapter 1475. Your Highness, we found a large storeroom under manager whose room. There are many rations and supplies hidden inside, as well as large amounts of mystic currency and magnetite. Empress Zhao's expression instantly turned unsightly. She stared at manager who with a sharp gaze and said, "Good. All these years, these spirit bamboo shoots have become tools for you to amass wealth." Manager who couldn't withstand the pressure anymore. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly with a pale face. "Your Highness, spare my life. Your Highness, spare my life. You unruly servant. You actually have the face to ask this consort to spare your life?" Empress Zhao was so angry that she laughed instead. "What are you still standing there for? Drag him out and chop him up for this consort." This unruly servant didn't consecrate the spirit bamboo shoots to the great king. Instead, he guarded this piece of land and became the great king himself. Good, 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 truly very good. Empress Zhao's eyes emitted a cold light. With a wave of her hand, 2 guards immediately stepped forward and dragged the wailing manager who out. "No, you can't kill me. Your Highness the Queen." This time, manager who was truly anxious. He panicked and said, "This old servant was sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu. You can't kill me. You can't kill me." Consort Cheng's expression changed as she immediately looked towards her daughter-in-law, Shu Quan. Shu Quan's expression also changed several times as she hurriedly rebuked. "Nonsense. How could you be sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu? You're clearly trying to use Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu's name to deceive Her Highness the Queen." "No, no." Manager who struggled with all his might and shouted with a pale face. I'll confess everything. Your Highness the Queen, tell me, this servant is just a lowly manager. If there wasn't an order from above, how could I dare to embezzle the spirit bamboo shoots and sell them all these years? Besides, even if I were to sell these precious spirit bamboo shoots, I would still need a channel to successfully exchange them for the materials I need, right? Empress Zhao pondered for a moment, then waved her hand to have the imperial bodyguards drag the steward back. She looked at him coldly and said, "You're right. I don't think you have the guts to embezzle it. Tell me who is above you, and who told you to do this." Shu Quan's eyelids twitched violently. She forcefully suppressed her flustered and short-of-breath emotions, and with a cold expression, she put on airs and shouted, "Wicked slave! You're about to die and you still dare to talk nonsense. Great King's second consort, don't interrupt now." Empress Zhao glanced at her coldly, a name already appearing in her mind. "It's the Great King's son. It's all the Great King's son's orders." Steward who confessed everything in one go, and he continued to speak in one breath. In previous years, the Great King's son even instructed this servant to present 1/5 of the spirit bamboo shoots to Her Highness the Empress Dowager and His Majesty the Great King in the palace. But this year, for some reason, the Great King's son suddenly ran over to tell this servant that he's short on funds. It's not very convenient for him to do so, so he told this servant to keep all of the spirit bamboo shoots and not send a single one to the palace. You're speaking nonsense. Without waiting for the Great King's second consort Shu Quan to speak, Her Highness Consort Cheng cried out first. She pointed at Steward who was kneeling on the ground, and was so angry that her entire body was trembling nonstop. You damned lowly slave, someone come, someone come. Drag this lowly slave away from me. Consort Cheng, why are you in such a hurry? The matter hasn't even been discussed yet you're in such a hurry to have this servant die. Is it because you have a guilty conscience? Chapter 1476. Empress Zhao coldly glanced at Consort Cheng and indifferently waved her hand to stop her. She then turned to look at manager, who was kneeling on the ground. You wicked servant, you better think carefully before you speak. Who exactly instructed you to secretly hide the spiritual bamboo shoots and exchange them for private goods? It was His Highness the Great King. Manager, who firmly believed that it was His Highness the Great King, as if he was biting onto a piece of fatty meat, refusing to let go even if he died. Consort Chung was so angry that her face and neck turned red. Suddenly, she almost lost control and ran forward. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws, wanting to scratch Manager Hu to death. Don't speak nonsense. You're slandering my son. When we return to the palace, I will personally explain this matter to the Great King. Empress Zhao coldly smiled. When the time comes, I will also ask Consort Chung to be present and explain everything clearly. Don't blame this consort for not giving you a chance to refute. Your Highness, please listen to me. This matter has nothing to do with my Jiaoer. Your Highness. Consort Chung was sweating profusely and wanted to refute, but how could Empress Zhao be willing to listen to her? She waved her hand and said, This consort is tired. Green Mammy, you will temporarily take over all matters in this Yiting court. Yes, this servant obeys. Green Mammy slanted her mouth and disdainfully swept a glance at Consort Chung and the Great King's second consort Shu Quan. Like a rooster that had won a fight, she led everyone away and began to arrange everyone's food and lodging. After tossing and turning for the entire morning, Empress Zhao only drank a mouthful of broth and ate 2 chopsticks of noodles. Right now, she was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. She only wanted to rest as soon as possible. Arbor had a bountiful harvest, so she didn't care about how noisy this flock of orioles and swallows were, and entered the court together with Princess Mi very quickly. The courtyard was allocated. Because this was only a private courtyard, with so many noble ladies arriving at once, it was naturally impossible for everyone to be assigned to a courtyard. Thus, they were randomly assigned to 2 or 3 people to a small courtyard. Little Crown Princess and Xiaomi were assigned to the same courtyard, and everyone was happy. However, Bai Li Zhen was assigned to the same place as Mo Shuang. She was really unhappy that after returning to their own courtyard, Arbor asked Haitang to cook a pot of spirit bamboo shoot shredded pork noodles. This pot of noodles was shared between the 3 of them, so naturally, they were able to eat until they were full. Princess Mi ate to her heart's content. She reached out to rub her belly and said, Younger sister, do you think that mother-in-law of yours really doesn't know? Or is she pretending not to know and taking advantage of the situation to make a fuss? What Princess Mi was talking about was naturally the matter of the spirit bamboo shoots. Qiaomu sighed. Say, why do you think she brought us to this June Mountains Yiting court for no reason? Is it really just to entertain you princesses and noble ladies of other countries? That was because Empress Zhao had gathered enough evidence to use the excuse of entertaining the noble ladies to directly tear into Her Highness Consort Chung. Princess Mi widened her eyes in shock. You? How did you know? I guessed. After Arbor finished the last mouthful of noodle soup, she threw the small bowl to Haitang to wash. Then, she walked towards the side room with her small hands folded, eating and drinking to one's heart's content, and having a nice afternoon nap. This is life, ah. Who cares how much of a ruckus she caused outside? In any case, it was none of her business. Master, I have planted the spirit bamboo shoots. Qiuqiu's joyful voice sounded in her conscious. In the future, you will be a person with spirit bamboo shoots. Can spirit bamboo shoots still grow in that bamboo forest beside the clear stream? Arbor suddenly thought of a question. Qiuqiu stared blankly for a moment before saying weakly, The last spirit bamboo shoot was eaten by you guys when you were cooking noodles. That is to say, spirit bamboo shoots were really extinct in this Yiting court. Heh, scammer. Chapter 1477. Alright then, in any case, the spiritual bamboo shoots that grew in this Yiting court would eventually be taken away by a pig like Steward Hu. It would be better to let her keep it and cultivate the spiritual bamboo shoots on a large scale. Arbor kicked off his shoes and fell onto the bed to take an afternoon nap. On the other side, Consort Chung didn't even bother to bring over the lunch and kept pacing back and forth in the room, while pinching her handkerchief. Other than Shu Quan, there were also two of the great king's concubines in the room, concubine Zhang and concubine Wu. Concubine Zhang had always been clumsy with words, and wasn't very likable. When she saw Consort Chung getting angry, she also kept her mouth shut and lowered her head, not daring to even breathe loudly. Concubine Wu, on the other hand, was smooth and slick. When she saw Consort Chung like this, she hurriedly advised, "Mother, don't be anxious. This is only Steward whose one-sided statement. It's very easy for us to deal with a mere servant. There's still a chance for us to make a comeback." When Shu Quan heard this, she sighed. She had long warned her husband that before doing anything, he had to use his brain first. Don't just look for trouble and act rashly. The crown prince's position was so secure. It wasn't something that her husband could easily fight for. If he had stood by the crown prince's side early on, there wouldn't be so much trouble now. It was a pity that her words carried little weight. Her mother-in-law and husband had their own plans and considerations. She was like a piece of duckweed, tossing back and forth on the sea with no end in sight. "Shu Quan, why aren't you saying anything?" Compared to these two concubines, Consort Chung trusted her daughter-in-law Shu Quan's brains more. However, Shu Quan didn't know what to say at this moment. When Consort Chung saw her daughter-in-law's appearance, she couldn't help but become anxious. "Shu Quan, say something." "Mother, I feel that if this matter isn't handled properly, the great king's son might not be able to make a comeback in the future." What did you say?" Consort Chung immediately became anxious. "It's not possible. Isn't it just a few lousy bamboo shoots? How could it possibly involve so many people?" Shu Quan faintly glanced at Consort Chung. "Imperial Mother, Lord Husband is moving the cultivation resources of Her Highness the Empress Dowager, the Great King, and even the princes and grandsons. Her husband had exchanged these cultivation resources for cultivation coins and resources. What did he need so many cultivation coins and resources for? Do you think the Great King will let him go this time?" Consort Chung sat down on the stool stupidly. Shu Quan glanced at her coldly, shook her head and walked out the door. Needless to say, on the surface, this matter was indeed the work of the Great King's son. But Consort Chung and the entire Shu family should have known about it. Perhaps the Shu family had also benefited from it. She laughed self-deprecatingly. So what if she was being cautious? With such a father, mother, mother-in-law, and husband, she could forget about living a good life. Shu Quan, you're the smartest, so you should quickly think of a way to smooth things over." "Shu Quan." "Shu." Consort Chung stared blankly as her daughter-in-law walked out without looking back. She angrily picked up a teacup and fiercely smashed it on the ground. This ingrate, Jiao, respected her so much and asked her for advice on everything. In the end, at the most crucial moment, she was actually so heartless. Vice Consort Zhang was so frightened that she didn't dare say a word. Vice Consort Wu sneered and helped Consort Chung sit down. "Imperial Mother, I think we can't count on elder sister. Right now, we can only think of a way ourselves and think of a countermeasure before we return to the palace." Chapter 1478. Arbor slept for more than 2 hours before getting up. She couldn't care less about how badly battered Consort Chung and the others were. The little fellow was sleeping quite soundly. There was no helping it. The battle was probably just around the corner. If she could sleep, she should hurry and sleep. Who knew what she would encounter tonight? Hiding brought in clean clothes. After washing up, Arbor was informed that the Great King's first consort was currently in the small courtyard and had been sitting there waiting for her for almost an entire afternoon. "Shu Quan." The Great King's first consort's demure face appeared in front of Arbor's eyes. She nodded and said, "Invite her in." She didn't have much contact with Shu Quan normally, but after a few interactions, she felt that this Great King's first consort was very decent and generous. Compared to her acerbic mother, she was much better. Shu Quan quickly walked in and immediately saw the little crown princess sitting by the table. Without another word, she lifted her skirt and was about to kneel. However, a strange force supported her knees and didn't allow her to kneel. "Eldest sister-in-law, what are you doing?" Arbor glanced at her indifferently and said, "If you have something to say, sit down and talk." Shu Quan pursed her lips and froze there stiffly. She didn't know whether to get up or kneel. On the other hand, Sheer very cleverly helped her up and sent her to sit beside the little crown princess. Crown princess. Shu Quan knows that the crime of being greedy for the ink spirit bamboo shoots is very serious. Husband, the entire king's estate, and even the Shu family wouldn't be safe and sound. Shu Quan isn't afraid of death, and is willing to die with her husband. However, I would like to ask the crown princess to grant Shu Quan a small request, and let my 3 children live. Arbor glanced at her coldly. Eldest sister-in-law, you should be begging the great king, and the queen for this matter, not me. I know. Arbor raised his hand to stop her from continuing. I'm sure you know what the great king is like. To put it bluntly, the great king is so indecisive and overcautious. Is he the kind of person who would kill his eldest son? You know very well in your heart that your husband will be fine. With the great king's way of doing things, he will at most ground your husband for 5 years. Xiaomu rolled her eyes. Shu Quan and Sheer were flabbergasted when they heard these somewhat disrespectful words. As for your 3 sons and daughters, they are all the great king's grandsons. If he can't even bear to kill his own sons, how could he possibly implicate his own grandsons? Arbor had long seen through the nature of the great king. Arbor faintly swept a glance at Shu Quan and said, "Speak, what exactly are you planning? Since you're asking for my help, shouldn't you tell me the truth and be frank with me? Isn't that better?" Shu Quan didn't know why, but when she looked at the little crown princess with such a cold expression, her eyes unknowingly filled with tears, and they gushed out drop by drop. "Crown princess." Shu Quan abruptly stood up and knelt again. "Yes, I want to ask for your help. Just this once, not as the eldest sister-in-law, nor as the great king's consort. Purely as the mother of 3 children, I beg you to help me this once. I only want to be willful this once in my life." An hour later, Shu Quan solemnly bowed to the little crown princess. She stuffed a small medicine bottle under her sleeve, and left quietly with the handkerchief in her hand tightly clenched. Other than the 4 people present, no one knew what had happened. She used the handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes, and followed Shu Quan with a resolute expression. Chapter 1479. Haitang prepared a sumptuous dinner for the little crown princess. While she was serving the dishes, she asked with a dazed expression, "Crown princess, why are you helping the great king's first consort? If I want to help, I'll help. Why do you ask so many questions?" Arbor said indifferently. "Oh," Haitang answered blankly. "This time, they'll definitely find a scapegoat for the spirit bamboo shoot incident. The great king doesn't want to watch his eldest son die, so old consort Shu and the Shu family will definitely be the scapegoats." Arbor drank a mouthful of the delicious fish soup and narrowed her eyes. She looked up at Haitang and said, "Haitang, have you practiced cooking before?" His Highness said that Haitang must learn anything that the crown princess isn't good at. For example, cooking, needlework, farming. "That's enough." Arbor interrupted Haitang's words with a dark expression. She freaking felt like there were so many things that she didn't know. Haitang blinked. "Crown princess, don't worry. Just bring Haitang with you wherever you go in the future. Haitang knows how to kill people and steal their goods. Below, Haitang knows how to cook. I know everything." Arbor turned to look at the dazed child, and couldn't help but burst out in laughter. "Go away. This annoying fellow." Haitang cleaned up the table and walked out obediently. When she reached the door, she couldn't help but look back at Arbor. "Crown princess, you should actually smile more." Arbor paused and shook her head helplessly. Their itinerary this time was to spend 3 happy days in Yuting Court. But looking at the current situation, Her Majesty the Queen and the others weren't in a good mood. They would probably return to the palace tomorrow evening. After all, Empress Zhao was in a hurry to report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king, and Consort Chen couldn't eat or sleep well, so she wasn't in the mood to play. The 2 at the top didn't get along well, so their emotions naturally affected the people below. Arbor's bed was newly made, and she had prepared her own bedding. Now she could roll around on the fragrant mattress. Perfect. Before sleeping, Arbor solemnly pulled Chirps out of the paradise and patted its little head. When Master falls asleep later, remember to wake me up if anything happens in the middle of the night. The little fat squirrel hugged its belly and nodded. In the end, not only did she have a good night's sleep, but when Xiaomu opened her eyes, she saw that fat squirrel curled up on her pillow with its belly protruding, sleeping even more deeply than her. Xiaomu was truly speechless. Sure enough, these adorable little animals were each more unreliable than the other. She said she liked beasts. Crown Prince Consort, you're awake. Haiteng walked in and curtsied. Her Majesty the Queen sent word just now. Today, all the princesses and young misses will be allowed to play in Yiting Court. Return to the palace before sunset. Arbor nodded, thinking that it was more or less as she had predicted. Queen Zhao was impatient to return to the palace and report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king. It didn't have much to do with her. Since the first half of the day was free time, then she might as well reluctantly wander around. After the master and servant pair brought along Princess Mi, the trio wandered around Yiting Court for less than an hour before they started to wander around unhappily. It just so happened that there was a mountain-leaning pavilion up ahead, and the scenery looked pretty good. The trio walked over and paused when they got close. They saw Ian supporting Empress Zhao as they walked into the pavilion, chatting and laughing. Chapter 1480. The two people were followed by a dozen or so smiling royal servants. Some were holding umbrellas, some were carrying food boxes, and some were carrying teapots and teacups. It was obvious that they were going to the pavilion up ahead to have a private chat. Xiaomi blurted out, "Younger sister, why do I feel like that whatever commandery princess looks more like Her Majesty the Queen's daughter-in-law than you?" Arbor stared at commandery Princess Ian coldly, and the latter also saw her when she turned around. At an angle that Empress Zhao couldn't see, she pursed her lips at her and smiled provocatively at her with the posture of a victor. Arbor was very disdainful of this. This woman had clearly already married into the vassal king of Annan's estate, so why was she still so oblivious to her status? At this time, the queen also saw Arbor and said with a nod, "Crown Princess Mi, if you don't have anything else to do, then come over and have a chat with me." Xiaomi tugged at Arbor's sleeve, and Arbor nodded. He walked up with Xiaomi and saluted according to etiquette, before sitting down in the pavilion leaning against the mountain. This pavilion was built against the mountain and looked down from above, with a circle of bow-shaped seats set up around it. At a glance, one could see several floating clouds beneath their feet. If it were the early morning, it would definitely be a spectacular sight. After Ian sat down, she instructed Su to bring over tea and pastries. She then eagerly boiled tea and laid out the pastries for Her Majesty the Queen. Sure enough, she acted more like a daughter-in-law than an actual daughter-in-law. Xiaomi pursed her lips and couldn't resist criticizing. "Oh, commandery Princess Ian, why do you have to do this servant's work? You're degrading your status. We the sons and daughters of the Western Wastelands aren't that particular. Just some plain water will do." Commandery Princess Ian was not angry at Xiaomi's sarcastic remark about her being a servant. Instead, she even smiled at her good-naturedly. It was as if the shrew commandery Princess and that everyone saw as a joke on her wedding day no longer existed. She had returned to that elegant, dignified, and beautiful commandery Princess Ian. However, Arbor could clearly see great hostility and resentment in the woman's eyes. What was she pretending for? Xiaomu swept her a glance before retracting her gaze. "Your Highness, please try this tea." A smile flitted across commandery Princess Ian's beautiful face, and she presented a plain-patterned teacup to the queen with both hands. Empress Zhao nodded and motioned for her to put it down. "Crown Princess Yu." Empress Zhao's gaze fell on the little fellow's head. In addition to a unique phoenix hairpin, there was also a bright and glistening flower embedded in the hair. "It's the jasper begonia flower," Empress Zhao blurted out. This jasper begonia looked even bigger than the one the Empress Dowager had. It looked really nice on the little crown princess's head. Arbor thought that the queen had taken a fancy to the only phoenix hairpin on her head. She hurriedly raised her hand to touch it and said, "I can't give this to you. Emolian made this for me, so it's mine." The Queen. On the side, Green Mammy rolled her eyes and said with a pout, Crown Princess. Her Majesty the Queen doesn't lack jewelry. Then that's good. The little Crown Princess put down her small hand and said with a nod, Even if you like it, I won't give it to you. It's mine. The Queen. Why did she suddenly want to kill this daughter-in-law so much? Inhale, exhale, exhale. Her son had taken a fancy to her daughter-in-law. Her son liked her, so she must be calm. She couldn't get angry. Chapter 1481. The Queen took a deep breath and tried her best to put on an amiable expression. Don't be angry. I can't anger my daughter-in-law to death. Crown Princess. This queen is very fond of the jasper begonia you are wearing on your head. This flower is even bigger and brighter than the jasper begonia that this queen saw at Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place. Oh, only then did the little Crown Princess realize that Her Majesty the Queen was looking at the flower on her head. Speaking of this flower, it was because she had casually removed a stalk of jasper begonia from the paradise when she was washing up in the morning. Haitang was so fond of it that she insisted on snatching it and trimming 3 to 4 flower ornaments out of it. How could the little Crown Princess be so happy to wear a flower on her head? She wasn't a plant, so why would she wear a flower? Yet after Haitang put it on her head, she thought that it looked pretty good, so she also wore it. The little Crown Princess thought that she couldn't waste the remaining flower ornaments, so she warmed them up with medicine and put them into separate boxes. Now that the Queen mentioned it, she took out 2 boxes, handing one to the Queen and the other to the impatient Xiaomi. If you like it, then wear it. I have soaked this flower in medicine, so it should be able to stay bright for 10 days to half a month. Empress Zhao opened the box to take a look. She couldn't help feeling delighted when she saw the 2 exquisite, jade-colored flower ornaments inside. Needless to say, Xiaomi was grinning from ear to ear. She put away the box into her inner world and cupped her hands at Xiao Mu. Younger sis, thank you so much. Before Empress Zhao could reply with a smile, Commandery Princess Ian widened her eyes in shock. She looked like she had been provoked, and she nearly jumped up from her stool. She rushed up to snatch the box in Empress Zhao's hands. Your Majesty the Queen, you mustn't. This flower is poisonous. Empress Zhao's eyelid jerked, and the box in her hands was nearly snatched away by Ian. What are you doing? Empress Zhao's face darkened in displeasure. Your Majesty, please believe Ian's words, and immediately summon the royal physicians who came with you. If they can't detect that this flower is poisonous, then Ian is willing to eat this flower. Ridiculous, Queen Zhao rebuked angrily. Then, she turned to look at the young Crown Prince Consort with some suspicion in her eyes. The young Crown Prince Consort shrugged nonchalantly and said, Then let's invite the royal physician to examine it. This queen believes the Crown Prince Consort. Queen Zhao glanced at Ian coldly and said, Ian, you truly were too disrespectful today. At the start, Empress Zhao's to Empress Zhao, Empress, and the Queen's Empress. She saw that the jasper begonia on the Crown Princess's head was pretty, so the Crown Princess gifted her the remaining begonia flowers. How could she have planned this out in advance, when this matter was so random? How could she have made the Crown Princess poison the begonia flowers in advance? She wasn't an idiot. Empress Zhao glared at Ian irritably. Alright, stop fooling around. Your Majesty, the Crown Princess herself said that she had soaked this flower in medicine. Arbor and Xiaomi both rolled their eyes. The little Crown Princess crossed her arms grumpily as she ordered Haitang. Go invite the royal physicians over. If the test shows that there's nothing wrong with my flowers, Ian, you said it yourself, eat these 2 flowers. Empress Zhao twitched her mouth. She couldn't bear to eat flowers even if Ian wanted to. How could such precious jasper begonia flowers be eaten? Soon 2 royal physicians were summoned to the mountain-leaning pavilion. Chapter 1482. After the 2 people went up to perform the greetings, they conducted a strict and repeated test for poison on the 2 jasper begonia flowers inside Empress Zhao's box. The results naturally made Ian feel terrible. These flowers were actually not poisonous. Not only that, But the two royal physicians were also praising them endlessly, saying that these begonia flowers were extraordinarily effective. She wondered which great medical master had used this medicine. But this medicine was only beneficial to the human body and did not harm at all. Ian was truly flabbergasted when she heard this. She felt that these two royal physicians were forced by the crown princess's status to say such flattering words. "Eat," the little crown princess grumpily shouted at Ian. Yet Empress Zhao quickly stuffed the box into her inner world and waved her hand calmly, saying, "How can we let her eat such a good flower ornament? Let's just choose 2 other flowers for her to eat." "Xiaomi, that..." Ian turned to look at Empress Zhao in disbelief, simply not daring to believe her ears. Just now, what did Empress Zhao mean by that? That meant even Empress Zhao was not standing by her side anymore, but she was merely worried about Her Majesty the Queen's health, worried that she would be deceived by the crown princess. "Going back on your word? Big liar." She clearly said that she would eat flowers, but now she wasn't eating them? She was lying to Jojo. The young crown prince consort stood up in a huff. She didn't say anything, as she strode out of the pavilion in a huff. Empress Zhao suddenly had a feeling that she had bullied a child. What was the meaning of this? Xiaomi twitched her mouth before standing up with a cough. "Apologies, Your Majesty the Queen. I will be leaving first with the crown princess." When the little crown princess walked out of the pavilion, she suddenly turned around, her sharp gaze landing on Commandery Princess Ian. "You were the one who put the Sumeru seed in grandmother's jasper begonia, right?" Commandery Princess Ian shuddered, and she reflexively shook her head and shouted, What Sumeru? I don't know what you are talking about." The young crown princess merely swept her a cold glance. Since Ian had already explained everything with a guilty conscience, there was no need for her to continue asking. After all, in the entire Mo Kingdom capital, there was only one stalk of a precious flower, like the jasper begonia in the hands of the Empress Dowager. Ian had mistakenly thought that her flowers were pruned from the jasper begonia potted plant that the Queen Dowager had discarded. This was also human nature. Only the person who had tampered with her grandmother's pot of jasper begonia could be sure that the jasper begonia was poisonous. Unfortunately, Ian did not know that there was currently a large sea of jasper crabapple flowers inside the little crown princess paradise. Arbor was so angry that she left. Xiaomi chased after her and said with a smile, all right, Jojo, don't worry. She won't eat flowers today, but I'll let her eat 10 liters of grass tomorrow to nourish her." Arbor's eyes lit up when he heard that. "You want to dig up some smelly grass for her to eat? Okay, I'll have my subordinates specially go to the manure pit to find some thatch." Arbor mused that this was a good idea. This was the outcome of deceiving Jojo. Not long after the two left, they heard Commandery Princess Ian's exclamation from the mountain-leaning pavilion. Startled, Arbor turned around and saw 2 giant nightcaw birds swooping onto the island in the middle of the lake in broad daylight. At this time, they were currently grabbing at the people inside the mountain-leaning pavilion. "The Queen!" Arbor turned around and ran toward the mountain-leaning pavilion without even thinking. Xiaomi followed closely behind as she nervously pulled out a long sword. However, before Arbor could run 2 steps, she lost her grip on the sword, and it fell to the ground with a clang. She wiped the blade carelessly with a handkerchief before pulling Ian along and saying, "Let's go quickly, what are you spacing out for?" Ian quivered and quickly nodded. She then passed through the small garden with Empress Zhao and ran toward the main entrance of Yiting Court. Chapter 1484. Just as the two people passed through the garden path, they saw 4 to 5 long-necked zombie cranes swooping down from midair. Anxious, Queen Zhao stared at the spirit artifact dagger in her hand and subconsciously swung it. In a split second, the dagger suddenly expanded by a dozen or so inches and turned into a treasured sword. Without any explanation, it cut off the head of one of the corpse cranes. This spiritual weapon short blade was given to her by Arbor previously. Back then, it was the giant ape who seized it from Northern Wei's 5th Highness, Wei Nanshu. Arbor had given it to Empress Zhao as a present, so it had saved her life this time. While Empress Zhao was fighting the remaining zombie cranes, Ian had already found an opening to slip away first. When Empress Zhao finished dealing with those zombie cranes and looked back, she saw that Ian had already run to the pavilion on the other side. With one foot about to enter the pavilion, Empress Zhao also quickly ran over. Right now, she was already exhibiting an extraordinary speed, so she didn't care about her image when she was fleeing for her life. She dashed over in a disheveled manner, and just as she reached the bottom of the steps, she heard the stern cries of the zombie cranes in midair. At this time, she already appeared to be mentally and physically exhausted after a series of battles. As a result, she didn't even dare to look back as she quickly ran up the steps. Just as she was about to dash into the pavilion with Yi, and to take shelter temporarily, she saw the two iron doors abruptly slam shut in front of her. Empress Zhao stared at those two closed doors in shock. Unable to stop in time, she bumped into the tightly shut doors with a bang. She couldn't resist pounding on the doors as she shrieked, Ian, hurry and open the door." Ian was scared to death, so how would she dare to open the door? She hastily braced her back against the door as she shook her head in fright. "No, I can't, Your Majesty. There are too many zombie cranes outside, so I can't open the door." "Ian." The queen simply didn't dare to believe her ears. That commandery princess and who expressed her filial piety to her day in and day out, wishing that she could treat her as her own mother-in-law. Such a demure, elegant, and beautiful commandery princess Ian would actually treat her like this at a critical moment? The queen turned around and saw a group of over 100 corpse cranes flying towards her. She had already dealt with a few corpse cranes earlier, so how could she have the strength to continue? He couldn't help but think to himself, "My life is over." Empress Zhao's face turned snow-white in a split second. She turned around and patted the tightly shut iron door, unwilling to give up. Ian, let me in." On the other side of the door, Ian once again fixed the door sills on the door. Her entire body was trembling uncontrollably, drenched in sweat, as though she had been fished out of the river. No way. She couldn't open the door. With her mediocre skills, if she opened the door, she would die together with Empress Zhao. She was still so young, only 17 years old. She couldn't die like this. In any case, Empress Zhao was also getting on in years, so she could just die by herself. Don't implicate her." Hearing Empress Zhao's screams outside the door, Ian's heart clenched tightly. She clutched the front of her clothes as she muttered to herself, I'm not being selfish. I just don't want to die. I don't want to die. She covered her ears with her hands as she hastily ran into the attic. She hid at the bottom of the stairs and hugged herself into a ball, not daring to make a sound while trembling. Queen Zhao was drenched in cold sweat as she fought against the flying corpse cranes in a life-and-death struggle. Chapter 1485. She really didn't expect that this trip to Yiting Court would be the day of her death. Empress Zhao couldn't help but smile sadly. She didn't expect that after scheming, she would end up including her own life. However, she didn't regret it. Consort Chung and that restless son of hers had delusions of making a move against her crown prince. She naturally had to deal with them before they succeeded, so as to avoid harming her son. After Empress Zhao killed another zombie crane, her right arm felt sore and limp, and it drooped down powerlessly. She chuckled self-mockingly as she looked at the flock of zombie cranes that kept pouncing toward her. It turned out that no one could remain calm in the face of death, because this kind of death was so unacceptable. Roar! After the giant ape's furious roar, the earth trembled incessantly. The giant ape kicked aside two zombie cranes and ran toward her with a thud. Empress Zhao looked up in shock and saw a stoic-faced little lady jumping down from the giant ape's head. After glancing at her, she directly started cleaning up the surrounding zombie cranes without a second word. Countless vines squirmed out from her sleeves and whipped at the surrounding zombie cranes. Accompanied by several hundred ice blades piercing through the air, all the approaching zombie cranes were severely injured by her thunderous methods. Empress Zhao only felt her eyes heat up and an indescribable emotion swelled up in her chest. Sure enough, it was still better to kiss a daughter-in-law. A coquettish bitch like Ian really couldn't be trusted. No matter how critical she was of this little stoic daughter-in-law before, her daughter-in-law still ran over to save her, without any hesitation for her son's sake, when encountering such a crisis. However, Empress Zhao's heart contracted tightly. As she watched the little stoic plunging into the zombie crane flock, her palms involuntarily broke out in cold sweat. This was an encirclement of several hundred zombie cranes. However, Empress Zhao's state of mind soon relaxed slightly. Following the crown princess's appearance, several hundred hidden night pavilion's guards also swarmed over. With everyone working together, it would only take minutes to clean up this flock of zombie cranes. Seeing that the situation was under control, the little crown princess quickly flashed to the queen. "Royal Mother, are you all right?" Empress Zhao shook her head with tears brimming in her eyes. She grasped her daughter-in-law's arm tightly. "I'm fine, Royal Mother is fine." This stoic-faced daughter-in-law of hers only looked colder than other people. But after interacting with her for a long time, one would discover that she was still very warm on the inside. "It's good that you're fine." The crown princess's speech, Empress Zhao's bang, winces as a heavy blow. Ian's shriek erupted from inside, followed by the extremely sharp sound of fingernails crawling on the door. "Empress TSS." Xiaomu pushed the queen to the side and kicked open that iron door with a vigorous kick. That iron gate weighed 500 kilograms, but his daughter-in-law was truly valiant. With this kick, that gate collapsed inwards with a loud rumble. Empress Zhao was shocked and couldn't help but sigh ruefully. If this kick landed on a person's body, it would definitely be a kick that could take that person's life. Following the iron gate's collapse, Ian's disheveled figure rolled out from inside, followed by two squawking zombie cranes. Two rattan vines whipped at the zombie cranes, and with two bangs, the zombie cranes' heads exploded. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.